Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. So I hope you've all had a good weekend. If you're watching this live, it is Tuesday. If you're one of my viewers that watches from the UK, you've just had a bank holiday weekend. I hope you enjoyed it. You've had hot weather. It's beautiful weather here in Spain. It is 25 degrees. Quite hot out there actually in the sun, but nice in the house. Comfortable temperature. So I hope you're all well. I hope you're all coping with whatever trials and tribulations life throws at us in this crazy world we live in. I hope your trials and tribulations are not too bad. Some things you can't do anything about, so you just have to roll with the punches, keep getting up, putting one foot in front of another, and thanking God really for every new day that you get to experience. So, talking of which, of course, this little boy, Preston Davey, never got a chance to live his life. He 13 months old when his life was brutally taken from him. It seems like for the 4 months he was with his adoptive parents, Jamie Varley and John something Thackeray, I bothered saying his name correctly. So for the just 4 months, this baby was with this monster couple. Believe it or not, this is the same guy. This is not the two dads. This is what Jamie Varley looked like when he first was interviewed. And then, he changed his look because, as I think I've said before, nothing like your baby, your adopted baby son, dying in mysterious circumstances to make you feel like a change of look, isn't it? Dye your hair, get a tan, grow a bit of facial hair, maybe go off to Ibiza or go on holiday somewhere. And this is his partner, John, GF. I'm just going to say GF because he's got the most ridiculous double barreled surname that I don't feel like I have to respect him and say it properly. So there he is with Blackpool Tower in the background because that is where this case has taken place. This is the court case now at Preston Crown Court. There is being heard at the moment the trial of these two monster dads who are both accused of causing the death of Preston, XEX abuse of Preston. So, I have to give you a warning here. Whenever we're talking about this case, very distressing because what happened to Preston is described. I was, don't go into any gory detail. But what happened to this boy in just 4 months of his life? I cannot reiterate this enough. 4 months he was with these two monsters, and within that time, he stayed. Well, when he died, he had over 40 injuries. So one of these horrible dads described him as a clumsy baby. Bloody hell, clumsy. Oh my God, 40 injuries in 4 months. That's more than clumsy, isn't it? That is like, God, was he blind or something, just kept walking into things? Because they're making a big thing about him having a squint. And he did walk into things, according to them. Things that they left up there, things that were up there in the house play with, the mirrors, and then even after the first time he apparently bumped into them and give himself a bruise. So you think they'd take it off then, wouldn't you? No, they left it there and let him bruise himself even more. And he had, according to the post-mortem by Alison Armour, he had fractured elbow, bruising at the throat, he had grit marks, he had slap marks, he had a bite on his bottom, what's possibly a bite on his bottom. There's lots of very strange photos and videos that Jamie Varley has been trying to explain away, mainly by saying, "Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Oh, I'd forgotten about that." He's got very convenient memory in this Varley, because things that are unpalatable, he remembers in great detail. Anyway, he's innocent till proven guilty, as is his partner. We have to remember that. Whatever you think of it, that is, the way our society works. Here they were as a family, and that poor little boy, a lamb to the slaughter, literally. And it's not only these two that are to blame, because one way or another they are to blame. I think it's pretty evident that Preston was not looked after satisfactorily. But whether whether they deliberately tried to hurt him, or whether there was any sex abuse, that's what the jury's got to make their mind up about. But I think it doesn't take much imagination to know that he wasn't treated very well. He was left in the bath for 14 minutes on his own. He was hanging over the edge of the cot with blue lips in a weird position, and photos were taken of him. He was left for an hour with breathing difficulties without being rushed to these two prats had a conversation about a kayak text conversation about a kayak that they were selling. And in the meantime, Preston was breathing his last gasps. And a video was taken of him doing that as well, instead of rushing him to the A&E. Of course, when they finally rushed him to the A&E, Jamie Varley was the big drama queen. "Oh, I want my mum, I want my mum. Oh, I've effing killed him. I'm going to hell." Trying to do his own resuscitation attempts on Preston, even after the poor hospital had tried for an hour and had said, "Look, we've just got to give up. He's not going to come back." They managed to get his pulse restarted faintly twice, but they just couldn't bring him back, because he was left with, he could have been resuscitated. But these twonks were too scared to take him to the hospital, because they knew they'd get found out for what they're doing. Now, of course, they've got separate defence lawyers. And I think, Jamie Varley was the main caregiver because he was off work. I think John his lawyer is trying to say that John knew nothing about all this, nothing, even though he had seen photos that had been taken, inappropriate photos of Preston, and may well have been there when abuse was performed on Preston. But his defence lawyer is saying, "Oh no, he didn't know anything about it. He's a good and caring father, and he believed what Jamie Varley told him." So that's basically sort of, we'd got as far as the trial as defence. Jay Varley is speaking in his own defence and being cross-examined by the prosecution and by John's defence lawyer, because, as I say, they've got different lawyers. So the trial finished, it was Friday, the last day, and then, of course, been the Bank Holiay weekend, and it didn't sit yesterday, but today the trial has resumed, and that's where we're going to start up from. We're going to start up from where, as far as we got, and we're going to see what's transpired today. I believe they're on lunch at the moment. Maybe as I get up to that bit, they'll have come back from lunch. I'll follow it. I'm going to keep following it. I do have a class later, but hopefully I'll be able to the end of this testimony. And tomorrow, if it's on tomorrow, I'll be back to talk about tomorrow. So I'm staying with this trial for as long as it lasts. And we're going to see justice for this little boy. We are his voice, because Preston, whichever way you look at that's it. This boy deserved better. He should have been cherished. Lucky were they to get this beautiful little baby. But how many people are out there who can't have children and want children desperately? And these twonks were given a beautiful. And like, so in my opinion, this is my opinion, you know, the jury will make the final decision. They just used him like a plaything. He was like just an accessory in their lives. Don't believe they ever cared about Preston. Certainly, you know, it's like when it's like a doll, but then of course, you know, he's a real life baby, so he's crying. He was doing things that babies do, fit to their lifestyle. He wasn't giving them a lie in the morning, and you know, it's like, oh, how irritating, you know, get this bloody thing keeps crying. Well, maybe he didn't keep abusing him, he wouldn't have kept him, would he? Anyway, this baby's gone now. His life is over. He's frozen in town. There's no more photos of little Preston. Won't be seeing him go to school, go to nursery, go to school, you know, grow up, become a teenager, have his first girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, get married, children. That's never going to happen. Or Preston is hopefully like this, an angel in heaven, and I hope he's been looked after better wherever he is now than was on this planet, because this world let social work down, because there were signs, there were flags, red flags. One, in my opinion, should never have been put with him in the first place. But anyway, if it, you know, he was, he should have been. They should have monitored that. You know, Jamie Varley made men. Sandy's family as well. They've got blame in this. But you know, I'm just thinking, if my brother or my friend said to me, "Oh, you know, he was suicidal. He was." You know, he was saying things like, "Oh, he's dead meat, and I'm going to strangle him." And this, don't say that about your children, you know. So he was a terrible dad for the forms that dad. I wouldn't call him a dad. I don't like him when he says he was a dad. He was never his dad. Also, John, little one. Little one, they're so condescending shit. Sorry, I'm getting angry. So I'm gonna, before I get too angry, I think I better get on with this. So say if I say that I've merchandise to show. There's some mugs and glasses and bottles of wine and things. I want that, but it's not appropriate at the moment. In fact, I'll probably do it in a completely different video, because we'll concentrate on Preston in this video. But thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Please subscribe. Please like the video and share it. YouTube doesn't like these videos of Preston because of the content. I mean, it's unpalatable. YouTube doesn't share out to the algorithm. So you share that would be great. If you're subscribed, thank you. If you're not, please come free. As a special thank you to those of you who bought coffee. Thank you. Hello there, you lovely lurkers. Thank you for watching. Hello to crew. Thank you for watching. And somebody's in the chat. Let's see. Hey Lily, 29 degrees. It's warmer in Hampshire than it is here in Spain. You know, yeah, no, it's been hot in Ireland as well, I believe, and different. But anyway, just make the most of it, isn't it, while you can. Because this is Spain now, just get hotter and hotter. as we get into June, as it was, well, it's too bad, but July and August will be really hot. So then I'll be moaning about heat. I'll be looking forward to the winter then when it comes round again. Let's start. So there's a lot of there's a lot to get through. Bless little yeah, I saw that it broke up. Lily's nothing I can do about it, sorry. I try, when I see it breaking up, I try and pause and wait for it to come back, but there's just nothing I can do, I'm afraid. Not yet. Will be soon. Right, I thought I had this ready where I wanted to start. That's disappeared. Right, I'll get to the beginning. So yeah, back in court this morning after a few days off for the bank holiday. Where am I going? 22nd of May. No, I'm going the wrong way. I'm going too far back now. Today. So court resumed this morning, as I say, and it's Jamie Varley still speaking in his own defence. It's quite unusual for people that are accused of murder to speak in their own defence. But anyway, so Mr. Wright asks if they have ever had that conversation. Doesn't say which conversation. So don't forget, there's not cameras allowed in court. I'm relying. Oh, this is the Manchester Evening News. They've got a reporter there who's giving updates. So Mr. Varley says in the week, months afterwards, after the incident. Let me just share this actually. Oh, the help thing, I don't know. Just does its own thing. Yeah, I see it wearing sometimes, Lily, but I just can't do anything. So I try and pause. So, you know, try and pause. But anyway, but thanks for letting me know. So, Mr. Varley says in the weeks or months after the incident, he did not see John. After the incident, both he and John did not go back to their home that they shared together. They went to live with their respective parents for at least 2 weeks. But then in the weeks and months that came, they resumed their relationship, but they did not speak or see or speak to John. He did not speak or see or speak to John for about 2 weeks after he was arrested and released. So Mr. Wright says, was that your decision? And Mr. Varley replies, I can't really answer that. We were both in shock and grieving. And he says GF returned to his mother's address in Blackpool where he was staying. They then left Blackpool together and stayed together until they were remanded. I wonder where they went. Mr. Wright says, in all that time, did the question pop up? What on earth happened? And Mr. Varley says, yes, it did. And Mr. Wright said, you would have racked your brain to find out what caused it. And Mr. Varley says, yes, I did. So don't forget, his official account was that he'd left Preston in the bath, and when he'd gone to have a shower, you know, like you do, you leave 13-month-old babies in the bath on their own. He went off to have a shower, like you do, And when he came back in, Preston was lying on his side in the bath, and he presumed that Preston had swallowed water and it was a case of drowning. That's his story that he came out with. Oh, and he says that earlier that day, Preston had a seizure. But listen to this. So Mr. Wright asks when he first raised the issue at 4:45, when he recorded Preston having what he believed was a seizure. And Mr. Varley says it was after first being interviewed in September 2023. So don't forget, this all happened in 2023. So it's 3 years ago, isn't it? Nearly. However, Mr. Wright says during those interviews, he did not say anything about that. For all those weeks and months, they must have been wondering what caused it. At no point it came back to him that Preston had another seizure. So he says he remembered in September. So in the July when it all happened, he didn't say Preston had had a seizure. It just came back to him in the September. Bloody miracle, isn't it, that he just remembered? So Mr. Wright says before that, never once did he say to John, oh, do you know what? Funny thing happened, he had another seizure. And Mr. Driver says, there's a very good reason you didn't mention it. And Mr. Varley says, yes, there was. I'd completely forgotten. So your baby has a seizure and you forget. Would you forget? Would you forget that your baby had had a seizure? And of course, he died later on that day. So anyway, Mr. Wright says the reason is that the collapse was the result of him blocking the baby's airways. So don't forget that was the cause of death for Preston. It was obstruction of his airway by a soft object, not a hard object, bruising on the back of the throat. Anyway, Mr. Harley says that is not correct. I mean, the face of this man, oh yeah, I forgot he had a seizure. I remembered in September. Come on. I mean, do you think he really does think, well, we'll see what the jury makes of it. Surely cannot think people are that stupid that they would believe this. Anyway, Mr. Wright says that Preston's lungs were testament to what you had done to him, and you had done it more than once. On the day he died, such was the obstruction of his upper airway that he perished. You killed him. I have not, Mr. Varley says. Now, that's not what he said when he went to the A&E with Preston. He was screaming, I've effing killed him. I'm going to hell. So that's what he was saying on the day. Now he's saying, no, I haven't killed him. And then Mr. Wright says he gave a false account of finding him in the bath drowned. And Mr. Varley says he did fear the baby had drowned. But don't forget, in the post-mortem, there was no water in his lungs. So Mr. Wright asked the defendant if he remembers the questions on Friday about Anne White for his former partner. And Mr. Varley says he's not his former partner. They are still together. So this gruesome twosome, as one of my chatters describes them, they are still together. They are still together. So the more that I hear about this, the more I think they're both as bad as each other. They're both, it might have been Jamie who did most of the abusing, but I think John knew about it just the same. They both saw the photos. I mean, come on. If your partner shows you a photo of your baby in these weird sort of videos and photos that he took, you're going to be suspicious, aren't you? But John's saying, oh, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. So they're in it together. They're both as bad as each other, in my opinion. So I hope they're both found guilty. But it's not up to me. It's up to the jury. We'll see what they end up saying. Mr. Wright says you never once in the time you spent in the days, weeks and months after your release discussed with him what it may have been that killed Preston. And Mr. Varley said, we did have conversations in the months afterwards as to what could have caused it. He says within a week they were told it could not have been drowning. However, he says he did not know whether secondary drowning had been ruled out. Well, do you know what? Why didn't you just ask, Jamie? You know, this is your supposed son. Do you just think about what you would do if it was your child? You'd want to know everything. If you didn't know what had happened to him, genuinely. So he said, no, he didn't know. Why didn't he ask? And and this is why he didn't ask, because Mr. Wright says the defendant was told that the cause of death was upper airways obstruction. And he asked if he was surprised. And Jamie says, surprised? I was surprised by what was implied, yes. And there didn't seem to be a connection between that cause of death and what you recorded at 16:45. And he said, it didn't slip my mind in that video in September. So don't forget there was a picture of Jamie with blue lips. So he says, if you saw your child lying on a bed with blue lips, what would go through your mind? And Mr. Varley says, what would go through my mind is that he was having a seizure. Mr. Wright says, it didn't go through your mind. He's not breathing. His lips have gone blue. He might die. I need to get him to a hospital. I need to call an ambulance. Didn't that go through your mind? And Mr. Varley says, no, none of that. No, bearing in mind as well, twice before they've had to rush him to emergencies. You know, he had a fractured elbow, he'd had other incidences. So Mr. Wright says that on July 23rd, a Sunday afternoon, Mr. Varley also found him draped over the bars of the cot with blue lips. And Mr. Varley confirms he found him in the position in the photos. The thing is, there's photos, so he can't deny it, can he? He can't deny that he was hanging over the cot with blue lips, because there's photos of him doing that. So, and Mr. Wright asks what his first reaction was when he found him like that, and he says, my first reaction is, I took a picture of him. It was to capture the funny position he was in. The funny position with blue lips hanging over the cot. Gosh, it does make you angry, doesn't it? Well, it makes me angry. And I'm not ashamed to say I'm angry. You know, I'm glad I'm angry. It was for his benefit, he said, for his benefit. This little baby's hanging over the cot with blue lips and takes a photo of him for his benefit, for our benefit, just to show him the positions he used to fall asleep in when he's older. Because remember, he said he took these pictures of his genitals, etc., so that he'd have something funny to show him him and his girlfriend or whatever when he was grown up. If he survives, Mr. Wright says, and Mr. Varley says he strongly disagrees, and Mr. Wright says it's the natural reaction of a parent to remove their child from danger, but Varley says he didn't believe Jamie was in any danger. So you just carried on taking images one after the other, didn't you, Mr. Wright says. Images did follow. Time enough to pick Preston up and lay him safely in the cot. And Varley says, in this moment, I do agree I should have lied him down. I didn't believe he was in any danger with blue lips. No danger. And then he says, Mr. Wright says, this little boy was your plaything. This is exactly what I think as well. I mean, he's saying this, it's up to the jury to decide what they believe, but to me, I think he's 100% correct when he says, this little boy was your plaything and you routinely abused him for your own gratification, didn't you? That's incorrect, Varley says. And he said, all this within 4 months of him coming into your home and leaving him dead. And Varley says, he did pass away in our care, yes. See how it changes it to our care. 4 months. I don't know why I'm obsessed with that, because it's like, he was hardly there 5 minutes, really, was he? He was in that house for 4 months, and look at all the injuries he had and what happened to him. It's almost a blessing that he died. Sorry, because how long would that abuse have gone on for? He wouldn't have stopped, this guy. It would have carried on and carried on and carried on. I don't even know when it would have stopped. Terrible. Mr. Wright Casey asks again, if never once did Mr. Varley consider that the video he recorded could have had something to do with the collapse. And Mr. Varley says, no, he didn't think the video was relevant, as he knew Preston had seizures. He keeps fixing it. Preston never had any seizures, I don't think. Well, the only time he had seizures was after he'd been abused, probably. And they did think if it could have been a seizure. And Mr. Wright asks if he thought back to the position he found him in on July 23rd over the cot bars with blue lips. And Mr. Varley says, no, he didn't. And Mr. Wright suggests that on July the 23rd, the defendant and his partner had sex assaulted Preston, and the photos were for the after effects. They were like trophies, weren't they? And don't forget, his partner was there in the house on that day. That's why he's saying that both of them had abused Preston on that day. Why do that? Why take a photo of him with blue lips hanging over the cot? He could have died that day just the same. Anyway, Varley says, no, you are far wrong, sir. You are far wrong. He's such a pompous twat as well. Then Mr. Varley was asked about pictures of alleged injuries to Preston, and he was shown injuries that the prosecution say shows injuries to his bottom. The prosecution asked if he noticed this when he was changing the baby's nappy that day. He says, no, I did not. And Mr. Wright asked if he discussed any problems with Preston's bottom with his partner that morning. But the defendant says there were no discussions of that type. He just didn't notice. Mr. Wright says that Mr. Varley's mum had been asked to bathe Preston when he was dropped off there because he'd been sick. Mr. Varley agrees his mum stripped Preston off and put him in the bath. She would have changed his nappy too, but Mr. Varley says she never mentioned any problems, but reminded him he needed to change his nappy. Mr. Varley agrees that his mum doted, so she didn't notice it either. It must have happened afterwards then. What did happen? What happened? And I don't know how Jamie's mum feels, but about now finding out about all the injuries to that little boy. And it seems like Jamie and his mum have a very close relationship, but I don't know what she'll be thinking now. So he said his mum doted on that little boy and has considerable experience looking after children, but she did not say there was anything wrong. So it's her fault then, isn't it? Mr. Wright asked why he didn't bathe Preston when they got home after he had been sick at his mum's, but the defendant says it was more important for Preston to have his nap at the time. He says Preston's trousers and t-shirt were taken off him and he was put down for a nap. So, Mr. Varley says he changed Preston 3 times after getting home from his mother's, 3 times, but he didn't notice anything wrong. He says when he learned of the alleged injury, he questioned whether it was because of his antibiotics. Oh, sure. His lies. Okay, where's the bloody Pinocchio thing? If anyone's a member out there, please put Pinocchio up, because do you know what? This guy's such a liar. He's a terrible liar, isn't he? Well, I can perhaps do it on my phone as well. Anyway, Mr. Wright refers to hospital notes. So he's blaming it on his antibiotics now. The hospital notes confirmed that Preston was not given any drug that might have caused this. And Mr. Varley says these are agreed facts, but at the time he believed antibiotics were a possible explanation, which he now knows have been ruled out. Didn't he say he hadn't noticed the injuries? He is such a liar. Honestly, every time he opens his mouth, it's just lies coming out, isn't it? Let me put his Pinocchio. I want to put, what a liar. Every time he opens his mouth, just lies coming out, isn't it? I hope the jury are noticing this. I really do hope they are. Surely, they won't be stupid people. So let's have an emoji. What have I got? Oh, I can't get on there. Oh, struggling to do it. Anyway, so Mr. Wright suggests he was seeking to mislead. Yeah, he was. Not tell the truth in interview, but Mr. Varley says, no, that's not correct. So the prosecutor calls his account nonsense. Mr. Varley says he doesn't believe Preston's nappy was changed that morning before he was dropped off at his mum's. Mr. Wright says he is making it all up. Right, let me try and find this. I want to put my Pinocchio emojis up. Mr. Varley says he would not have noticed anything wrong with Preston's bottom that morning, as he doesn't remember changing him, and his mum didn't raise any concerns. It's all just nonsense, isn't it? Mr. Wright says. No, it's not, Mr. Varley says. Of course. He's not going to say that it's all rubbish, is he? Let me thank you, Lily, for putting thank you for putting the Pinocchios up. I've just found them. I'm going to put them up. Yeah, what a liar. I hate lies, honestly. Look, everybody tells little white lies here and there, but people who lie blatantly like this, honestly, I just cannot bear liars. And I'm hoping that the jury's taking notice of this. Anyway, Mr. Wright continues that Mr. Varley had suggested his treatment in hospital could have caused the alleged injury to his bottom. Oh, so we've gone from antibiotics, now it's the hospital staff's fault. But the defendant says he doesn't recall suggesting that. Mr. Wright says that medication was ruled out, hospital was ruled out. You aren't suggesting your mother or partner, are you? No, he says. Who does it leave then? 2 others, sir. 2 others who? Myself and my stepdad. Oh, so stepdad's in the frame now. So Mr. Wright says, are you realistically suggesting to this jury that the culprit responsible for this is your stepfather? I'm not, sir, Mr. Varley says. So who does that leave, Mr. Wright asks. The other would be me, but nothing has been done to him. Mr. Wright suggests that something had been done to Preston by Mr. Varley which caused the injuries. You would be wrong, the defendant says. Well, how did it happen? I know it wasn't caused through any form of sex assault. There has got to be another explanation, Mr. Varley says. So he's got this, he's got all these bruises, this mark on his buttocks and the bruising on the back of his throat, and he's got no idea what caused it. Funny that. So Mr. Wright asks if he remembers the evidence from paediatric consultant Dr. Gifford. We heard from her very early on, wasn't it? It's about 2 weeks ago, that the injury to Preston's bottom was consistent with a forceful sex assault. Oh my God. Mr. Varley says that has not happened. So sorry about that. This is just, it's so horrible. This is definitely the worst case I've ever covered. But I just don't feel I can let it go now. I've got to follow it through the end. This little baby deserves justice. So Mr. Wright is asking about a photo of Preston's bottom taken by Varley on July the 23rd. Mr. Varley says he doesn't believe the baby was uncomfortable in the photo. That's another thing he keeps saying. Oh, I don't believe that that was abuse. I don't believe that the baby looks uncomfortable. You know, I don't believe all this crap. So he just because he doesn't believe it, you know, sorry, I'm going for my Pinocchio again. Do you know what? I could just sit here with my finger constantly pressed on the Pinocchio button, couldn't I, really, for this guy? In fact, next time I do a thumbnail for this case, I'm going to do Jamie Varley as Pinocchio. So, he doesn't believe the baby was uncomfortable in the photo. So Mr. Wright asks if Preston's condition in the photo didn't lead him to seek medical advice or advice from his mum. Mr. Varley says his mum saw the picture at a later date. However, Mr. Wright reminds the defendant his phone was recovered from the bed on July the 27th. So Mr. Wright suggests that as time went on into July, the abuse of Preston gravitated towards sex abuse. From a fracture to his elbow to sex abuse by both defendants. No, that's incorrect, says Varley. And Mr. Wright says within the space of 4 days he was twice sex abused. And he said Preston Elijah has never been sex abused, or at least he used his name there. So don't forget, Preston is his name he was given at birth, and Elijah is the name that these two twonks gave him. That was your trophy, just as the pictures of him draped over the cot were. No, it was not, the defendant said. Now, they had a little break then, and actually I'm going to just go and get a drink because I've run out of, and it makes my throat dry, so I can't be without a drink. But just going to put a picture up of Preston as well, because I think, yeah, we need to look at Preston's little face, you know, to remind us this is what we're talking about here, the abuse of this little mite, you know, this little angel who hopefully now is a real angel, being looked after a bit better. Anyway, I'll be back in 2 ticks. Behave yourselves. Oh dear, awful, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, most of us would look at this photo of this little one and you just want to give him a big cuddle, you'd want to look after him, you'd want to make him laugh, you'd be singing songs to him. Most of us would not look at him in the bath on his own for 14 minutes and videoing it, and thinking it's funny, and most of us would not think that in a million years, would we? But that's what Jamie Varley thought. It was all hilarious. He's a real sadist. This is my opinion. I'm entitled to it. I think he's a sadist. How anyone, even if it wasn't your son, whatever child it was, whether it was anybody else's child, whether you didn't even like children, children aren't everyone's cup of tea, are they? Not everyone's, but there's even people who maybe, aren't very comfortable around children. They still wouldn't hurt them. They still wouldn't just leave them deliberately for 14 minutes or take photos of them with blue lips. Or, take videos of him when they clearly can't breathe. And in the meantime, have a conversation with their partner about selling a kayak. This is the next level: coldness, psychopathy, sadism, or just disinterest. How was he ever allowed to have a child? He couldn't look after a goldfish, this man. He's a drama king himself. Remember him screaming from it for his mom? He's nearly 40 years old. Anyway, did not notice bruises to Preston's thigh. He said Preston was taken to Mr. Varley's mother's house wearing only a nappy on the morning of July the 27th. And Mr. Wright asked if any bruises were noticed by the defendant, his partner, or his mother. And Mr. Varley says he did not see the bruises to Preston's thigh. Even for a toddler, they are pretty unusual, Mr. Wright says. Now, I don't agree that Preston was a toddler. A toddler to me is someone who's toddling, like walking. Preston wasn't walking yet. He was only just crawling. He was 13 months old, and as far as I know, he wasn't walking yet. And now some babies do walk at 12 months old. They all walk at different times, don't they? Some babies are lazier than others. And it's not, I think, you've got a range of time that babies normally learn to walk. Then they're a toddler. I don't think this was a baby in my eyes, not a toddler. Anyway, even for a toddler, they are pretty unusual, Mr. Wright says. Yes, Mr. Varley says, it would be unusual for a toddler. I'm not sure, but I don't remember him having those bruises in the morning. Listen, your baby has got bruises, you notice. Mr. Wright says the defendant described Preston as clumsy and would sometimes fall. But in the time he was in his care, he didn't see him sustain linear bruises to his thigh, which would have been pretty odd. Yes, I would agree, Mr. Varley says. So what caused it, Mr. Wright asks. Not your allegation, sir. I cannot say what caused it, sir. Is he being sarcastic when he's calling him sir? When you picked him up from Grandma and took him home, you took his trousers off. I didn't see a bruise then. Equally, I didn't see one on the way to the hospital. Mr. Varley says he cannot remember. You agree, Lily? Hi, Sean. Yeah, he's not a toddler, is he? Toddler is two in my, the terrible twos. That's toddlers who are toddling around, in my opinion, anyway. While a baby's still crawling, they're a baby. I know it's only, semantics, but it's important, I think, because babies are less likely to get bruises than toddlers. Toddlers are more likely to get bruises because they're, running around perhaps, falling over, they're only just learning to walk. But babies really, I don't see how a baby would get all those bruises. Not a baby in 4 months. They're not mobile, are they, in the same way? Even though he's trying to make out this baby was mobile, that he kept banging into the glass door because he'd put those fidget spinners on it. But take the bloody fidget spinners off. What, you're putting things on the glass door? The first time that my child, even if I did put them on, the first time that my child banged into the door because the fidget spinners were there, they'd be removed. You do sometimes put things in, oh God, and they're banging into them and think, oh, I shouldn't have put that there. But you take it, you move it straight away. He didn't, he left it there. Anyway, Mr. Wright says that either those bruises were caused accidentally or non-accidentally. And the defendant says they were not caused deliberately. He says they were potentially from when he was holding Preston in the car. When he was holding him in the car. Oh, when he was taking him to the hospital. Well, he was already dead then, so he's not going to have bruises then. He was already dead before they took him to the... That's the only reason they took him to the hospital in the end, because he died. They said he went floppy. He died. Because by the time they got him to the hospital, he had no heartbeat. He said he was trying to hold Preston by his leg while they were driving to hospital. But Mr. Wright says this little boy was either gripped or slapped very hard. And Mr. Varley says he was not slapped. No, he probably was gripped, but not on the way to the hospital. He was gripped as he was abusing him, most likely, which is what caused this obstruction to his airway, I think. Or anyway, we don't know. That is pure speculation. Let me just put Jamie Varley's photo up. Sadly, we do perhaps have to look at him sometimes. I want everyone to see his face anyway. I want them to see this was... he sort of looks familiar to... I definitely don't know him, but he sort of looks familiar to me. I don't know why. But anyway, that was him then. This is him now. If by some miracle he gets found not guilty or gets out on bail or, on parole or whatever, I hope everybody remembers what he looks like. This is the man who did what he did to Preston. Even if at the best case scenario, he neglected him. Mr. Wright refers to the evidence about Preston's blood gas tests, which the doctor said were not consistent with there having been a downtime of 10 minutes. If that little boy was in cardiac arrest at the time, you couldn't have bruised him, no matter how you had held him. And this is it. He could not have bruised him because he was dead. Mr. Wright says he reminds the defendant that there needs to be circulation for bruising to occur. And Mr. Varley confirms that Preston collapsed at home and he attempted CPR. He was already effectively already dead, Mr. Wright says. A pulse was recovered for a very short period of time, but he was in cardiac arrest for a lot longer than you are prepared to tell this jury. You killed him, and this wasn't a drowning. Well, good for you. You tell him. Something or some mechanism had caused that little boy's respiratory system to be obstructed. You're 100% wrong. Oops, I just spilt my drink everywhere. You're 100% wrong, Mr. Varley tells the court. So remember, in one of his interviews, this twonk tells the police he will fight them till the day he dies. There was no sex abuse. I also saw one interview he was saying he was so accusatory towards the police. Oh, I wasn't as interested in his genitals as you seem to be, he said to the policeman. Oh my God, he's the one that took the pictures of the genitals, that baby's genitals, not the policeman. And again, this deflection, isn't it? That is a pure psychopath deflecting behaviour back on somebody else. can't own his own behaviour, he can't take responsibility. Anyway, Mr. Wright refers to the experts' opinions that something had been inserted into Preston's throat causing injury. And Mr. Varley says he remembers them referring to bruising to Preston's throat. Mr. Wright says the defendant caused that when he was abusing Preston physically and sexually. However, Mr. Varley says that is not correct. The jury is now being shown phone records which show Mr. Varley returned home at 3:03 p.m. on July 27th. Mr. Wright is going through the defendant's account of what happened when they arrived home. He removed the vomit-stained clothes and put Preston down for a nap. Now, don't forget as well, this is a baby that was being sick on a regular basis. It seemed to always be being sick. And I know babies, they have it's mainly milk that they sort of bring up, isn't it? I don't know, I'm thinking like of my son when he was a baby. I just don't know if he was really sick that often, apart from just sometimes with the milk they bring back up, don't they? But, because of the abuse, probably. The boy was restless, didn't sleep for long. Mr. Varley says he didn't bathe him earlier because he needed to repair the bath plug. Mr. Wright says, on your account to this jury, it's closer to 5:30 when you put him in the bath. That's correct, Mr. Varley says. And Mr. Wright asks whether bath time was for a different reason, such as him being assaulted, or Mr. Varley seeking to make up a story as to how he had collapsed, e.g. drowning rather than being killed by the defendant. You are wrong, Mr. Varley says. The defendant is now being taken through his police interview on July 28th, and he agrees that at that time he was blaming himself for leaving Preston alone in the bath. I don't think I had time to sit and think about what had happened, he says. You didn't have time to put together a cock and bull story, Mr. Wright says. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Hi, Sarah. Was there any mention of seizures in foster? No. I don't believe there was, Sarah. I don't think I think in the foster carer said he was a difficult sleeper. That was something that the foster carer said, but there was no, as far as I know, there was no talk of seizures. This was something that came new when he was in the care of these two twonks. So, yeah. There was the health. They did say that he had problems with. He had sleeping issues. It wasn't a brilliant sleeper. She did say that. What was the other thing? And it was supposedly Jamie Farley, wasn't it? Who noticed that Preston had a squint. Funny that, isn't it? So, he was congratulating himself on that, but. It was handy for him, this squint, because then he could use that as an excuse for why Preston kept falling over. Wasn't judging things right. Anyway. Do you know what? Doesn't matter what lies this man tells. He knows what happened, and God knows what happened. And as I've said before, the jury, they're listening, they're hearing every little bit, they're seeing the photos, they're seeing the videos, they're getting an idea of Varley's demeanour and how he's, answering the questions, etc. So you just hope that the jury are getting this man's measure, and the other guy's going to speak, I suppose, in the end, the partner. I don't know. So Mr. Wright says the defendant's house but he didn't shower him as soon as he got home. Mr. Varley says he wiped himself down but showered. Would you shower because your baby's been sick? I mean, this is what I'm trying. That'd have to be a lot sick, wouldn't it, to make you have to have a shower? I mean, yeah, it's not very nice when babies are sick on you, but and they do sometimes do that. But it's normally just a little bit of milk or something, isn't it, that they're bringing back up, or it's not normally projectile vomiting that would make you, take all your clothes off and have a shower. I think the whole load of it, all of it, is a load of rubbish. I think he abused Preston, and then he had a shower, maybe because I don't know, and then he just left Preston on the bed. This bath story, I think it's complete make believe, the bath story, to try, and he was thinking of, oh my God, what am I going to say happened to him? So Mr. Wright says Preston and Mr. Varley went to the defendant's bedroom, and Mr. Varley agrees he had a little nap and woke up to the dog licking his face. God, that poor dog, it makes you wonder what they've been doing to the dog. Preston was on the bed and appeared to be having a seizure. Oh, yeah, so he just woke up and Preston's having a seizure. Rather than immediately going to his assistance or even record, you flick through your phone first of all. Mr. Varley responds, I believe it was very quick, sir, that I looked through my phone. I woke up a bit startled. I didn't realise I'd nodded off and the dog was licking my face. I mean, it just all sounds like a load of crap to me, personally. And Mr. Wright says, this is all rehearsed. This did not happen that way. It's just an explanation that you give off pat. And Mr. Varley says, that's not true. Let's have some more Pinocchios. Right, so they've changed over report. So it's Rachel Smith now reporting for the Manchester Evening News. It was someone else before. So after seeing Preston having a seizure, Varley scrolled on his phone for 41 seconds. I'm just thinking why you would, if your baby's having a seizure, why would you just sit there and scroll on your phone? Anyway, Mr. Wright says there was 41 seconds of scrolling before Mr. Varley opened, and then he opened Snapchat and took a video. I believe that time takes into account an app being active. I don't believe that is scroll time, Mr. Varley says. Okay. Mr. Wright refers to Mr. Varley's police statement in which he says he ran the bath while Preston was napping and everything was ready to go. He says there's no reference to spending time in the bedroom scrolling. Mr. Wright says the accounts are inconsistent. Mr. Varley says he was arrested initially on suspicion of neglect. I was also then arrested on a disgusting allegation of murder. My head had fallen off, he says. He tells the jury he doesn't remember the week after Preston died. He says he's intelligent enough to not say Preston had drowned if he had not. We didn't drown. Mr. Wright suggests Mr. Varley sought to give an account consistent with Preston's routine rather than what actually happened, and Mr. Varley said that's incorrect. Mr. Wright asks why Mr. Varley's hair was dry when he arrived at hospital if he had just had a shower and conditioned his hair. Mr. Varley said he had used a towel. The prosecutor suggests this account is a fiction. So his hair was completely dry by the time he got to the hospital. Now, some people's hair does dry quicker than others. My hair dries very quick because it's very fine. Though he does look like he's got quite thick hair, doesn't he? He does look, let's have a look at him. He's up there. He's got quite thick hair. So what do you think? Would his hair, if he'd only just literally had a shower? He's got short hair as well. It could have been dry, I suppose. Mr. Varley says he had used a towel. The prosecutor suggests this account is a fiction. He says Mr. Varley didn't realise his phone was going to undo him. The phone that I think if someone would have committed such an act, the phone, hang on. The phone that I think if someone would have committed such acts would have removed, Mr. Varley said. The problem is that John came back and that little lad was already dying. You'd gone too far, Mr. Wright says. Why on this occasion did you lock the door and leave the key on the interior of the lock? Because did he just not want John just walking in? Why did he lock the door? Sometimes I lock my door on the inside. I mean, you can't get in my door anyway, but you can extra lock it on the inside. But I would only do that like perhaps when I was going to bed and, just as an extra security precaution. But I would never leave the key on the inside when you're expecting your partner to come home. Just seems strange, doesn't it? Hey, Joanne. Hi, how are you? So Mr. Wright now refers to the body-worn footage from hospital in which Mr. Varley described using a hairdryer to dry his hair. Well, you wouldn't be doing that if your child had died on the bed, would you? You won't be thinking, before we go to A&E, I'll just make sure my hair looks okay. You wouldn't do that, would you? As part of daily routine, that would be correct, but not here, Mr. Varley says. Mr. Wright says that is why he suggests the defendant is reporting routine rather than what actually happened. The defendant says he had just experienced a very traumatic time and he probably couldn't even recall what his name was. Mr. Wright suggests he embellished the account to give the impression of it being true. That is incorrect, Mr. Varley says. I mean, does anyone believe him? Maybe some of you out there may be somebody who does believe him, or do you think we should more give him the benefit of the doubt, or or do you think, I'm quite happy for people to give, say what they think if they disagree with me, but as you say, Sarah, I do believe that a lot of it was for attention because all these things happened when his partner was not there. And I think he then sent his partner these horrible photos and things. And I don't know, the problem is you actually, you cannot put yourself in these people's minds, can you really? Because luckily we couldn't think like this, could we? We couldn't think like these horrible people, who, yeah. And luckily we can't think like them. Don't want to think like these horrible people, do we? Lily's hair looks like he's had a fight with his forehead. Yeah. Anyway, what his new hair or his old hair, I just can't believe how he's changed his appearance so much. Maybe that's a deliberate thing, because of everything that's happened and he was trying to seem more incognito. So let's not forget so apparently for the first 2 weeks after this happened, this gruesome twosome did not speak to each other. They went to live with each other's parents, with their respective parents. But they are now back together. They are back together now in a couple. They're in prison now, though, I suppose, because they've been arrested and charged. But briefly, they moved back in together. They moved out of their parents and moved in back together while the case was been prepared, I suppose, and that. Yeah. So whatever, this is another reason why I think they are in it together, because if John was innocent, like his defence lawyer is trying to say, John had nothing to do with any of this. If he was innocent and he thought that Jamie had done something to this baby, you know, he wouldn't be wanting to be in a relationship with him, would he? But apparently they are together, so, you know, I think they're both in on it personally. I think they're as equally as guilty. So Mr. Wright suggests that he has embellished the account to give an impression of it being true, but Mr. Varley says that's not correct. So Mr. Wright now refers to the police statement in which Mr. Varley described dragging Preston out of his bath seat and putting him on the bathroom floor until John arrived home. Why did you not mention events that happened prior to the bath in this interview? Mr. Wright asks. All I can remember was from the bath, he said. Mr. Wright goes through mobile phone data from the afternoon of July the 27th. He refers to a recording on Snapchat and says, what did you do to him? Now, maybe it's just me, but don't forget this guy's nearly 40 years old. Is he not a bit old for Snapchat? My impression is that Snapchat is for younger people, but maybe I'm, you know, I don't know. Yeah, what's he doing on Snapchat? Of course, a lot of messages disappear on Snapchat, don't they? And I don't know, maybe there are older people on Snapchat, but he's a very childish man, though, all round, isn't he? You can see his pyjamas, his Rupert Bear bottoms and his Jurassic Park T-shirt. And a lot of the things when we've heard him giving evidence, he's really quite childish himself. Anyway, Mr. Wright goes through mobile phone data from the afternoon of July the 27th. He refers to a recording on Snapchat and asks, what did you do to him? And he said, I did not do anything to my little boy. He was never your little boy, Jamie, never. You didn't call 999 or the hospital, Mr. Wright asks. This felt normal to me, Mr. Varley says. Mr. Wright says, as if he didn't consider the risk of putting Preston in the bath alone when he had only had a seizure that afternoon. You know, it doesn't add up, does it? So supposedly he'd had a seizure that afternoon and he put him in the bath on his own. Don't put a baby in the bath on their own. That's not rocket science, is it? You might not know much about babies, but one thing you definitely know is you don't leave them in a bath on their own. Even when you're there with them, you've got to be vigilant, haven't you, every minute? Mr. Wright says, oh, that's right, Mr. Varley says, I would not have put him in the bath if he was in no fit state of having one. And Mr. Wright says that a child that age is wholly dependent on the person caring for them. And he said, I could tell he was okay from his interactions with me. And Mr. Wright says, did something else happen to that little boy to cause him to be struggling for breath? Yeah. Anyway, Varley says no. And Mr. Wright says, the person responsible for it is you. Mr. Wright says, that's incorrect, the defendant says. I would have loved to be, to actually see him say it, hear him say it. It's difficult, isn't it, when it's just written down like this, to get a sense of whether he's, I do think he's telling lies, but I would like to have actually hear him speak, see his face, get proper judgment. But anyway, the jury can see him. So, yeah. The jury can see him and hear him, so see what they end up coming up with. Mr. Wright now refers to Dr. Rosenthal's agreed evidence. He is an expert in pediatric respiratory medicine. Having looked at the Snapchat video, the expert says it was likely seizure activity, but the cause would depend on what happened before the video. You obstructed his breathing, didn't you, for your own amusement? And it was not the first time you had done it, Mr. Wright says. But Varley says those claims are incorrect. Mr. Wright says the evidence of Dr. Rosenthal is that Preston's lungs had not functioned for 30 to 45 seconds. Now, you might think that's not a long time, but it is. If you hold your breath for 30 to 45 seconds, that's quite a long time. So Mr. Wright asks what caused that. I don't know, sir, Varley replies. Dr. Rosenthal said the cause of death was acute upper airways obstruction, but he said that the difficulty was what caused the terminal obstruction. He considered the video captured at 4:45, which he says appears to show Preston not breathing. There you are, having opened Snapchat and seeing your little boy was not breathing. That's incorrect, Mr. Varley says. Did you ever for 1 second think, I need to stop this and get him to hospital straight away? Mr. Wright asks. No, because I thought he was having a seizure, Mr. Varley says. His lips were blue when you started recording. What are you going to record someone with blue lips? Oh, anyway. But you didn't do anything to alleviate his condition, Mr. Wright says. And he says, no, I did not recognize his lips. So he's saying he did not recognize that his lips were blue, but it was apparently evident on the video. So it was evident on the video. I'm sure if you were right there with someone, if you can see it actually on the video, you'd definitely be able to see it if you were right there in person, wouldn't you? If somebody's lips had gone blue. Do you know, the thing is, he thought he would bounce back like he had before. So many times he'd done it before, and Preston might have had some problems, but he'd come back. He even said that, didn't he? Oh, he'd bounce back. He thought he would bounce back again, but he didn't realise he'd gone too far that time. Mr. Wright asked Mr. Varley if he remembers Dr. Gifford's evidence, in which she said she wanted to pick the baby up and save him when she saw the video. So the doctor, when she saw the video, said, I just wanted to reach and save him. That baby is in distress, and that distress had been caused by you, Mr. Wright says. No, it had not, Mr. Varley responds. And that event simply slipped your mind, Mr. Wright says. It did, yes. Slipped his mind. It never slips your mind if your baby has a seizure. Of course it doesn't. Liar. Anyway, then they had a lunch break, then it resumed. Let's see, it's Greta Simpson again now reporting. About the hair drying I asked you about, he begins. I asked you about the contents of the video from body-worn footage at the hospital. You said you dried your hair. Let's consider for a moment what you were describing. You'd had a shower. Quickly then gone out to dry yourself by getting the towel on the landing. You don't use a towel that is found in the bath. Oh, that's right. He said he went out onto the landing, left Preston there, went out to the landing to get a towel, but it turned out there was a towel in the bathroom. When you're on the landing, you can't see Preston. Correct. You can hear him playing with his toys. You then dry your hair. Why not do that in the bathroom with him in view? You would just never leave a baby in the bath on its own, just wouldn't. Why not go out, grab your towel, return to the bathroom to dry yourself while supervising him? Why do you leave him unsupervised? And Mr. Varley responds, I believed he would be okay while I quickly dried my hair. So yeah, he's not just talking about nipping out, grabbing a towel and back in a couple of seconds. He went off and dried his hair. And the other thing, if you're drying your hair, you can't hear what's going on. So Preston could have been screaming, crying, gurgling because he was drowning in the bath. He wouldn't have been able to hear. He's got the bloody hairdryer on. Is the fact that none of this happened in the way that you have sought to portray it, Mr. Wright says. That is not true, Mr. Varley says. I was asking about user actions on your handset, Mr. Wright says. We were dealing, oh God, I just dropped that. We were dealing with the gap of 7 minutes, the 41-second elapse of time. You'd want to keep an eye on him now after recording the video. Yes, I would, Mr. Varley says. He would be the centre of your attention. Yes, he was, Mr. Varley says. Well, clearly wasn't the centre of his attention. That's 100% certain. Snapchat, you close your Snapchat at 16:46. At 16:47, you open your calculator. Why, Mr. Wright asks. And he says, I believe it was me trying to time how long he was having his seizure. What, with a calculator? He responds, if that's so, you don't spend very long recording, do you? You close it in 10 seconds. It wasn't much of an effort to calculate the length of time. That's a calculator, not the timer, Mr. Varley says. I believe I was looking for my stopwatch. It was closed 10 seconds later. What were you really doing in that time? Mr. Wright asks. Comforting him, Mr. Varley says. Listen, he hasn't got a history of, we haven't seen, but we've heard of lots of videos where Preston was in distress. He wasn't comforting him. He doesn't comfort him. He likes taking pictures of him when he's in distress or in compromising positions or struggling for breath or, hanging over the side of the cot in a weird position, whimpering in the bath when he left him there for 14 minutes. He likes to take pictures of Preston in distress. He gets off on it. This man's a sadist. So I doubt very much that he was comforting Preston because, that just wasn't what he did, was it? Just wasn't what he did. This poor little baby. God. So every time I look at their faces, I just want to slap them. Honestly, they're grinning like a Cheshire cat. And all the time, this baby, God, this baby, what they did to it. And then, they were just out there living their life as normal. Not now, obviously, and hopefully never again, but they were for a while, just living their life as normal. And Preston's life just been stolen. Well, not according to Jamie Varley. He was comforting Preston, according to him. So Mr. White says you open the timer at 16:48, but by 2 minutes later, your partner is sending you a WhatsApp message about a kayak. What was taking priority now? Timing your son's recent seizure or opening WhatsApp to see John's message? And Mr. Varley replies, there was nothing wrong with my care in those moments after his seizure. And Mr. White says, were you really timing at that moment? Oh, what were you really timing at that moment? And he says his seizure. And then, oh my God, I've never even thought of this, but it could be true. Were you still then seeing how long you could stop him breathing for? So Mr. White is accusing him of deliberately stopping him breathing and timing how long he could stop him breathing for before. Oh my God. Was it like some sort of sex pleasure of how long he could stop him breathing for? And then it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Did he try and judge it, and he misjudged. He went too far this time. He'd obviously done it before. And, Preston had bounced back, in his words. He probably was trying to be careful of how long he could, obstruct his airway for. And he misjudged it this time. He went too far. That's what I personally think happened. Anyway, he says no. Mr. White says Mr. Varley sent 6 WhatsApps about the kayak and how much to ask for. So while his son's lying on the bed, breathing his last, he's sending all these WhatsApps about the kayak and thinking about how much it's worth. So Mr. White says, what were your priorities? What were your priorities that afternoon? And he says, they will always be with my son. Well, it's not so at least not calling him little one, I suppose. Drives me, but he was never his son. He'd only had him 4 months. So, it wasn't as if he literally had only been in his care 4 months, so they hadn't built up a father and son relationship. He wasn't interested in him as a son anyway. He was just like some sort of sex toy or something. I don't think he had any feelings for Preston as a son. So Mr. White says, your son who had another unexpected seizure or elsewhere. Exactly, Sarah. So you imagine that? Imagine when your son or your children were babies and there's your baby having a seizure or, in difficulty. And you think, oh, I'd just blow dry my hair. It's not even funny, but it's funny because it's ridiculous. You just wouldn't even think about drying your hair, would you? Anyway, he said, no, my priorities will always be with my son. So that's what he says. Mr. White asked Mr. Varley why he closed WhatsApp and reopened the timer. Oh, that's strange. I don't believe I did, Mr. Varley says. Mr. White says if it opened automatically. And he said, no, I think it's in the background. Flicking through my apps, I might have touched it, but I am confident I did not go back to the timer. Mr. White asked what was really going on during a gap in activity of 4 minutes and 4 seconds. I was comforting him, Mr. Varley says. Whatever. Mr. White says there is a gap of 6 minutes and 16 seconds. What was going on during this period? I can't say specifically what was happening, Mr. Varley replies. I remember singing a couple of songs to him and comforting him. Well, obviously this is the time that the prosecution are virtually saying this is the time he was abusing Preston, isn't it? Mr. White says, we know what wasn't happening. He was not having a bath. On your version of events. Not at this time, no, Mr. Varley responds. So he says he was pottering around during an 11-minute gap in phone activity. Mr. White says Snapchat opened, video automatically played. Were you simply reviewing what had taken place? I was reviewing his seizure, Mr. Varley says. But doing nothing about it, Mr. White says. I did. I comforted him, Mr. Varley says. Yes, Sean, you're right. Prison won't be fun for them. Definitely won't be fun. I hope they're both going to prison, personally. Both of them. And no, it won't be fun. It'll be horrible and good. Because you know what they put that little baby through, they deserve that and worse, don't they? You close Snapchat. There you are comforting him, opening your email app. Was that you comforting Preston? Mr. White says. He was in my arms. After he had his seizure, he was fine, Mr. Varley says. Then another gap. 11 minutes, 14 seconds. What were you really doing? Mr. White says. Pottering around, Mr. Varley says. And Mr. White asks, what was Preston doing? You still hadn't bathed him. And Mr. Varley said he was in my bedroom. Hmm. So Mr. White asks about an activity gap of 16 minutes and 48 seconds when Mr. Varley went to run a bath and came back to take a phone call from his partner. Uh, Preston was in my room, Mr. Varley says. Mr. White says Mr. White says Varley had previously sent his partner messages about Preston having seizures in his absence. On this occasion, you didn't mention it because you were concerned about his driving, he says. That's just a lie, isn't it? You didn't say anything then or later because you were concealing what you'd been up to. That's absolutely not true, Mr. Varley says. Uh, sorry, I was just laughing because I was reading your message there, Sarah. Because YouTube hid that message. It came up as I had to acknowledge it. Like it's probably the word DICK. Um, so YouTube held it back, and then it was asking me if it was okay to show. Anyway, I said okay, and you should be able to see it now. But yes, exactly, Sarah, what your daughter says, that's true. Snapchat, the messages disappear, don't they? So a lot of people use Snapchat and you can't always get them back up again. I think there's a way you set it to disappear in messages or whatever. And I never used Snapchat. I used it very briefly, only for the channel. God, it was ages ago now. I tried using it, but I just don't like it. I don't understand it. A bit like TikTok, I don't understand it. I don't trust it. So I don't really like using it. So I thought, well, why even have an account? I have got accounts. I've probably still got Snapchat account, but I never use it. And to me, Snapchat is something that my son would use. It's what young people use. And she's got an idea. Your daughter will know about that because people who are younger people that are used to using these apps and things. It's amazing what they'll say to you, like, oh, well, that people use that for whatever that I wouldn't know, because I've never used it. So you do get a lot of insight from your children, don't you? Anyway, so he said, on this occasion, you said you didn't mention it because you were concerned about his driving. It's just a lie, isn't it? You didn't say anything then or later because you were concealing what you'd been up to. That's absolutely not true, he says. I don't know that he did conceal it from John. So John said, and I watched John being interviewed, and he said that he'd had a phone conversation with Jamie, and he was asked, what had you talked about? And he said, oh, well, I just phone and I say, do you want me to pick anything up for dinner and blah, blah, blah. I think they were talking about it then. I think you probably told him that he'd had a seizure. John might have even said to him, get him to the hospital, and then he might have said, oh no, I'll wait till you get home. I think John knew. Personally, I think John knew. Where are we? So, Mr. White says, you said that at 17:34 you were in the bathroom running the bath. If we look at the time that elapses, your partner arrived home at around 18:15. What really happened in those 40 minutes? And Mr. Varley says, Elijah had a bath. Mr. White says, at least he used his name, I suppose. Let's look at what you said to the police on July the 28th. I put him down for his nap. I woke him up. That's not what you told this jury on Friday. So that's the other thing. He's getting his stories mixed up. And Mr. Varley says, he was unsettled. I went to get him up. I believe that is what I told the jury. When I say he didn't wake naturally, he didn't wake up and remain awake. He was turning, so I went and woke him up. And Mr. White says, you said you didn't want him to struggle when you put him down to sleep later. He went to sleep and I went and sat on the bed for a little bit. I think he had half an hour. I woke him up. That's what you said on Friday, wasn't it? And Mr. Varley says it's out of context. I got him up. It's a description of words that I don't always get right. I meant I got him up. Yeah. Mr. White says, could there be anything more important in your life on July the 28th than giving a detailed and accurate account of the events leading to your son's collapse? And Mr. Varley said, I don't think there is anything more important, but when you're in that situation, you see it differently. Well, we'll take his word for that because we'll never be in that situation, thank God. We'll never be in a situation where we've left a baby who's just had a seizure in a bath on his own while we go and have a shower and blow dry our hair. We'll never be in that situation, will we? So, we'll take his word for that, that's for sure. I'm going to put a little picture of Preston up again. I just want to see his little smiling face, bless him. This one. Oh, his little face. He's adorable. His smile. Anyway, I can't because I get so angry. Oh, this poor baby. So Mr. White says, you said to the police you don't remember when you went downstairs. We knew there was a bottle on the banister. You said you remembered sitting on your bed for a few minutes and you don't remember if you fell asleep. Now you're saying you did fall asleep and the dog woke you up. Which is it? I fell asleep, Mr. Varley says. And Mr. White says, you said, I don't think you fell asleep to the police. Which is it? I can confirm I fell asleep, Mr. Varley says. Right, where's the Pinocchios again? The trouble is he lies so much, he forgets what he said. But of course, because they've got him on video with his interviews, they know what he said. But it's right, you do not forget. If you tell the truth, you don't need to remember what you said. You might get some, listen, the thing is, the police, whatever anybody thinks of the police, when they interview someone, they've got an instinct whether somebody's telling the truth or not. And their instinct, sometimes they call it hunch or an intuition. Especially if you've got a lot of experience in that job, questioning people, etc., you just get an instinct, and somebody who is genuinely innocent might still get confused about what actually happened. But I think on a big thing like this, if you think of events in your life that have been really significant, not just talk about you. Yeah, if somebody said to you, oh, what did you do 2 weeks ago on Wednesday? you might think, oh, it'd take you a little while, wouldn't it, to think about it. But if somebody said to you, oh, where were you and what were you doing when you received the news that your dad had died, or that, your friend had been in a terrible car accident? I mean, when my friend was in a terrible car accident, I was about 19 years old. We're going back 40 years. I remember everything. I remember everything about the phone call from the police coming to pick me up, taking me to the hospital, a mum being there, sitting talking to a mum, a dad turning up, a boyfriend turning up. I remember everything. There's nothing that I've forgotten about how that, that traumatic, because traumatic incidences, you don't forget. You might forget your routine, what you did after work 3 weeks ago on Friday, which pub did you go to, how many drinks did you have? You might forget that, but you do not forget trauma. Even people that you don't know, most of us probably remember where we were when we heard that Princess Diana had died, or Michael Jackson had died, or, somebody famous even, never mind, your own sort of baby. I mean, how could you forget? How could you forget what had happened? Anyway, why on the 28th of July did you say you didn't think you did? Mr. White asked. And he said, I didn't recognise the events then. It was all after the bath, Mr. Varley says. Yeah, whatever. Whatever, Varley, liar. So, Mr. White says, you said you fired off a few emails off to the solicitors and had some downtime. You said Preston didn't go down for that long. You got up and ran him a bath. You didn't, though, did you? I did when I got off the bath, Mr. Varley says. I know, Joanne, isn't that a beautiful picture of him in that little orange jumpsuit with it? His smile, he's got the most beautiful smile, hasn't he? He really is a cutie. Mr. White says, the impression you're having is that you have got the bath ready while he is napping. I got him straight up and put him in the bath. That's a wholly different version of events. Hi, Sicilian Spitfire. Isn't he cute? Adorable. He literally is. I mean, it wouldn't matter if he wasn't. It's still terrible what's happened. But when you see his little face, just, he deserves so much better, this little boy. All right, I'm getting upset now. I better carry on. He deserved so much better. It's just terrible what happened to him. This twonk did it. Oh my God, I can't wait for the verdict in this case. So Mr. White says, the impression you're having is that you've got the bath ready while he is napping. You said I got him straight up and put him in the bath. That's a wholly different version of events. Mr. Varley says, I never expected years down the line having to be that accurate. What? Right. Oh my God, this swear word's bubbling up in me. I never expected years down the line having to be that accurate. No, because what, you thought that they'd swallow your pathetic story that it drowned in the bath, didn't you? You thought you'd get away with it, is what you mean. So Mr. White says, you were asked if you woke him up and you said you did. You're saying it was all in your bedroom? There's no reference in your interview to him being unsettled or playing him soothing music or drifting off. And Mr. Varley says, I don't believe there is from what I can see here. Absolute load of cojones, this man talks. That's balls, by the way, in Spanish. So Mr. White says, you said you can't sneak into his room. You have to get him up. Then you described how you ran him a bath. Your account is wholly different to the account you gave to the jury. And he says, I don't believe it is. The facts are all there. Mr. White says you were asked where Elijah was and said he was sleeping, but he wasn't, was he? And that's what I recalled, Mr. Varley said. Keeping him to a routine, you are hardly likely to have left him sleeping at 5:30, Mr. White says. I remembered running the bath then, Mr. Varley says. Mr. White says, I suggest these inconsistencies are because you've been making it up from start to end. And Mr. Varley says, it was a very traumatic day, sir. No, it was a traumatic day. I mean, what do you think? Do you think he might have got confused because it was such a traumatic day? Or do you think he just didn't get confused? He's just lying through his back teeth? Anyway, doesn't matter what we think, really. It matters what the jury thinks, doesn't it? So Mr. White says, do you remember leaving him in the bath on his own on another occasion? You said he hated to be left alone at the police interview. So why did you do that on July the 24th without a bath scene? So this is what he says. I wanted to see his interaction without me being there. He's a sadist, this man. So it's like if you leave your baby and then film what they're doing because you want to see if do they miss you, or what a load of crap. Anyway, Mr. White says you told Janet G you had dark thoughts about drowning or suffocating your son. So don't forget he had said these things to people. There were red flags here. That is not true, Jamie said. Oh, they blocked your comment again, Sarah, but I've put it up. I pressed the. Honestly, you'd be surprised what YouTube will block a comment for. So, yeah, there were all these red flags, weren't they? He told this woman, Janet G, he had dark thoughts about drowning or suffocating his son. He told another friend that he had suicidal thoughts. He told a social worker that he was struggling. This is after 4 months. God's sake. Well, if you're struggling after 4 months, what are you going to be like after 4 years of bringing up a child? What are you going to be like when they're teenagers, where they're really difficult? You know, this man should never have been allowed to have this baby. He couldn't look after a goldfish. You know, you wouldn't trust him. You wouldn't trust him with your worst enemies, goldfish, you know, would you? So you put him in that bath in circumstances in which the bath had been filled on July the 24th, Mr. White says. You left him lying flat on his back with water up to the level of his face. That's incorrect. It wasn't up to the level of his face, Mr. Varley says. Right up to the edge of his face. We've seen the video. Thing is, he's denying it, but there's a video of it. You left him in that condition. Were you recording this for a different reason? It's like an sex reason, isn't it? Or was he recording it to send to other people, probably his partner? Other than to see how he got on, no, Mr. Varley replies. Gosh. Anyway, then Mr. Wright asks, how was leaving him like that consistent with independence? And Mr. Varley says that I was there in that day, so on the 27th I knew he would be okay with me pottering around and getting my pyjamas. 2 totally different contexts. And Mr. Wright says, having been asked about conditioning his hair, you said it was not long. You said you could hear him banging toy cups in the bath. I'm going to suggest that that was all lies. Absolutely not, Mr. Varley replies. Anyway, I'm speechless, really. Why did you put him on his own in the bath when you said at hospital that he doesn't like that? He doesn't like the bath. Oh, so apart from anything, you don't even like the bloody bath. Doesn't like the bath. So it's not as if he's wanting. Of course, he couldn't say, "Oh, Daddy, I want a bath," because he probably he's not vocal yet. So he certainly didn't ask to go in the bath, and now he said that he didn't like the bath. So, oh yeah, so your baby doesn't like the bath. So you think, oh, I know what I'll do. He don't like it, so I'll just put him in it on his own. And Mr. Varley says, my language was all over. Ah, liar, liar, Pinocchio, liar, liar, pants on fire again. His language was all over the place. God, he's got a good answer for everything, hasn't he? When he knows he's been caught out in a lie, he just says, oh, I can't remember, or my language was all over the place. It's my way of talking. He says things like that, doesn't he? Yeah, he was an accessory, Sarah. And I think, somebody else said that earlier as well. He definitely, for this couple, he was an accessory, no more than a new, a handbag or, I don't know, something to show off. They didn't care about him. I don't think they cared about him at all. That was the worst day of our lives. Well, it wasn't a very good day for Preston either, funnily enough, because it was the last day of his life. At least you've still got life. He doesn't like to be rushed, but he did love baths. So now he's saying he loved baths. So he said at the hospital he doesn't like the bath. Now he's saying he loves baths. I could hardly speak that day. So it's because he could hardly speak that day, but really it's because he's a Pinocchio. He's a liar. And I think that's the last thing we've had so far. So there've been new updates. We'll stay on for a bit longer because they haven't yet. I'm just looking what time it is. So here in Spain, it's nearly 4:30. So in the UK, it's nearly 3:30. So I presume they will finish soon. They probably won't carry on too late. They don't seem to go more than sort of about 4:00. Well, what do you all think about it? What do you think about this poor little boy? Does anyone, and I ask again because there may be some of you out there that do believe. I don't think there are. I'm sorry. I no, seriously. If you do believe this person's account, he could be telling the truth, of course, couldn't he? I mean, it's not impossible, I suppose, that he's telling the truth. Just unlikely, isn't it? Doesn't seem like the truth, does it? And another thing that I always say, listen, to get a case like this to court, not everybody who goes to court is guilty. That's the whole point of having trials, isn't it? Everyone's innocent till proven guilty. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. The defence don't have to prove anything, really. This is the law, that is our society, that is how we, the justice system works. People don't really have to prove their innocence. The prosecution has to prove that they are guilty. Now, in a case like this, it's so difficult because nobody was there that saw what happened. Luckily, there is a lot of video evidence because this knob, this twonk, Jamie Varley, took all. Really, the worst evidence against him is evidence that he himself is responsible for recording. And of course, a lot of it he did try and delete, but it was found on his phone. So it's ironic, really, isn't it? Because the biggest evidence for the prosecution is the evidence that this twonk took himself. Videos, photos, he is really, in a way, a prosecution witness himself because he's the one that took all these weird videos and things. And you know what? There's a lot of people out there who are parents, um, you know, who'll be watching this and thinking, what? Because listen, there is no such thing as a perfect parent. There'll be things that we've done wrong with parenting. We talked about that before. You don't get a degree in parenting, do you? Anyone can have a child if they're fertile, and then a lot of it is um, trial and error, isn't it? You just sort of hope for the best. Um, you know, but how many people seriously would take these kind of pictures and videos? I mean, you do take a lot of pictures and videos of your baby, that's for sure. I think you take a lot more pictures in the first couple of years, don't you? And as time goes on with kids, or this was my experience, and I think it's the experience of most people I know. Take a load of pictures when they're babies and everything and grow, because they do grow so quickly. So you feel like you always have to be taking pictures, but not like that. Not of them with blue lips hanging over the cot or having a seizure, and don't forget you only had him for 4 months as well. So I'm thinking about all the photos I've got of my son are over years and years. And then as they get older, you perhaps take a few less pictures, and then they get to a point where they don't want you taking pictures of it. As they get older, and certainly as they become teenagers and that, you point a camera at them and they're like, no, don't take my photo or whatever. But yeah, I think you do take a lot of pictures of babies, but they're not these in the nature of the pictures that this man took of Preston. And as I say, they only had him for 4 months. So all this is condensed. This is not 4 years of pictures, etc. This is 4 months. Hi, Darren. Yeah, I think you're right, Sarah. I think they didn't want him anymore. I think they thought it was a good idea to have a baby and it didn't work out. That's personally what I think. They thought, oh, this is great. He even said he thought it'd be a piece of cake because he's got, Jamie even said that. He said he had a lot of nieces and nephews. He thought it'd be a piece as easy as he thought it would be. He admitted that himself. And, it is different. Babysitting is different from actually, having a baby yourself. And yeah, I think he did cramp their style. I completely agree. And I think Jamie thought it was a good idea to have a year off work, but he didn't like it when John went to work. I think he was jealous of John. And I think a lot of the time he was sending him photos and it was all about attention. I think there's a lot of that attention seeking behaviour. Either saying that Preston, was ill and he wasn't, or sending these horrible pictures. And I think he probably told John on that last day, that phone call that they had, I think John knew something had happened to Preston before he turned up at home. Do you remember he said that weird thing about the nappy and, what did he say? I didn't know if I was going to change the nappy and throw it out the window for my partner to put in the bin. Oh, just really weird couple, whatever. So, Lily, you think that Jamie is guilty. What about John? Are you a bit out on the, John's a different. I'm watching his partner John being interviewed. I did feel that he was guilty as well. There's just something about, I don't think he's telling the truth. It reminded me of Maxine Carr in the Sower murders case. It's just too much information, too much description. And he's back with him now. They're back together. Now, I think if that was my partner and all this that had come out about, that the little Preston didn't die of drowning, as John found out more and more about that, it's likely that Jamie did something to him. How did he end up back with him? Even Maxine Card, bloody details. Whether you believe her or not that she didn't know anything is another matter. But she disowned Huntley. He's not disowned Jamie, has he? I think they've come to an arrangement between each other of the story that they're going to tell. That's my personal opinion. Again, just an opinion, just me saying what I think. What will matter is what the jury thinks. That's what really matters, isn't it? Okay, so the next post has come up. A couple of posts. Let's have a look. Oh, we've got another reporter now. We've got Fionnuala Haney, who's reporting for the Evening News now. There's a few. So, the defendant says he could hardly speak when he was questioned about the account. And Mr. Wright says, how was leaving him like that consistent with that independence? And Mr. Varley says, I was there in that day. So on the 27th, I knew he would be okay with me pottering around and getting my pajamas. Oh, I've already read that. Sorry. Next one. Yeah. Mr. Wright says, you said, what? You gave him his toothbrush in the bath. Toothbrush? Will you give a baby a toothbrush to brush her own teeth? What? Anyway, how many teeth has he got at 13 months old to brush? I'm sorry, this is just a load of rubbish, isn't it? So you said you gave him his toothbrush in the bath. How did his toothbrush get into the sink? And Varley says, I may have put it there. Mr. Wright says, you at that time said you ripped the bath seat from the bath and threw it into the sink. And Mr. Varley says, I believe he had it in his hand still. What's he got a toothbrush in his hand for in the bath? Nobody brushes their teeth in the bath, do they? Do you? I could honestly say I've never brushed my teeth in the bath, ever. Or is it just me? Maybe you brush your teeth in the bath, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be judgmental. Well, who brushes their teeth in the... What's giving him a toothbrush in the bath for? I believe he had it in his hand still. And Mr. Wright says, how on earth did you not dislodge the sponge from the top of the taps? Nothing appears to have been disturbed. And Mr. Varley says, I don't understand why you would dislodge it. And Mr. Wright says, how did his buckets get placed on the side, one on top of the other, if when you came back into the bathroom you were confronted with a little boy half submerged? And Mr. Varley says, they might have already been there. After swilling his hair, I must have put them on the side afterwards. I might have heard him clinking his toothbrush. Oh my God, he's such a liar, this guy. Until now, you have never said that, ever, Mr. Wright says. I don't understand why this is important, Mr. Varley says. What's important is over here in terms of your account, not what you consider is important, he says. And Mr. Wright asks how the buckets ended up so perfectly positioned. And Mr. Varley says he doesn't know. And Mr. Wright says, I think because the bath incident just didn't happen. That's why he didn't have wet hair, so the baby didn't have wet hair. Perhaps he blow-dried the baby's hair while he was dying on the bed. Why he didn't have any fluid in his lungs. Why there was no evidence consistent with drowning. Your account is complete fiction. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Wright. I agree with him. It's honest to God, it's like Jack and Ori listening to this guy talking. Bloody hell. He's like, he wouldn't know the truth if it slapped him across the face, would he? And Mr. Wright says, why did you say he was banging his bucket when you were out of the bathroom? When you go back in, you are confronted with an emergency. It's hardly then the time to be picking the buckets out of the bath and putting them at the side. And Mr. Varley says he would agree. I never said once he was using them. It was a genuine mistake, he said. I said buckets because I remember using them to wash his hair. So he's just making it up as he goes along now. It's all lies, Mr. Wright says. So Mr. Wright asks Mr. Varley, how did the bath empty? I don't know, he replies. There is the evidence of the test performed by CSI of filling the bath and then timing it, noticing that it doesn't appear to empty, Mr. Wright says. How is it that on this date the plug seems to be up and the bath is empty? How is that? Mr. Varley says he doesn't know. You say you got him out of the bath, proceeded to dry him before you put the towel in the bath. Are you saying that? Mr. Wright says. I dried him in the bathroom. It must be the case from that photograph, Mr. Varley says. Why would you put the towel in a bath with water in it? Mr. Wright asks. Yeah. I cannot recall emptying that bath, Mr. Varley says. The last thing on your mind would be emptying the bath, Mr. Wright says. And no one else than me can comment on that, Mr. Varley says. God. You're the only person alive who was in that bathroom. What you say is nonsense, Mr. Wright says. And that is incorrect, Mr. Varley tells the court. Wonder what the jury are going to make of him. So Mr. Varley says, I've always said I don't know whether I touched the tap or not. I also mentioned the seal was broken. And Mr. Wright says, on Friday you said you thought it might have been Preston. Is it not true that you're just making it up as you go along? That is incorrect, Mr. Varley replies. You had a near miss, Mr. Wright says. You then took him to his bedroom. Wouldn't your natural response be to swaddle him in the towel until you can dress him? Not necessarily, Mr. Varley says. This child you had just rescued from being partially submerged, then you took him naked into his room. I thought he was okay after that, Mr. Varley says. I thought it was a close call. Yeah, he was on the bed struggling for breath. Left there for an hour and 40 minutes. And by the time they took him to the hospital, that child was already dead. Because they'd left him. You know what? If they could have taken him instantly, if he took him instantly, they probably would have been able to save Preston. But he didn't want to take him because he'd already been to the hospital. So let's just have a little reminder here. So they had him for 4 months. In the 4 months that Preston was with these monsters, he sustained over 40 injuries. He was admitted to hospital 3 times. The 3rd time was the fatal time. He had a fractured elbow. He had bruises on his head that were symptomatic of grips. He had a grip, linear bruises on his leg. He had a bite mark, what looked like a bite mark on his buttock. He had bruising at the back of his throat. He had injuries that were, according to the doctor, compatible with sex assault on his bottom. 4 months. Not even as long as this year's been. We're now in May. So a month longer than so far we've been in 2026. That's how long they had him. And that's all the injuries that he sustained. It's unbelievable. Just unbelievable. What they say, one time is an accident, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. So what is 41 times, of injuries? Hi, Joanne. Unbelievable, this case. Really is a horrible case, isn't it? So Mr. Wright says that Mr. Varley believed he had died from drowning. You were asked to interview if you could see his face in the water. And you said you panicked because he was out of his seat. You described seeing his right ear and the back of his head. Yeah, I remember him saying that. He could see his ear and the back of his head. He was face down in the water, for fuck's sake. According to him, but he actually wasn't. So yes, how is it this little boy appears then to have been partially submerged with water that would probably go over his mouth, but there were no physical signs consistent with drowning? Yeah, so the doctor said he didn't drown. There were no signs that he drowned. So if he was face down in the water, he would have water in his lungs, wouldn't he? No? You run out of words really without getting angry. So Mr. Varley says, I made it clear on Friday where his mouth was and the position I found him in. And Mr. Wright asked, do you think you may have removed the water from the bath? And Mr. Varley says it's a possibility. Would you not remember if you'd removed the water from the bath? Anyway. So then he was questioned again about emptying the bath. You said at interview you had not released any water. Why are you changing now? And Mr. Varley says, it's not a change. I just don't believe I released any water. He's good at... So let's have another reminder. This man is a teacher. Not only a teacher, but he's head of year at high school. That's his job, or it was his job. It's not his job anymore, that's for sure. Let's have a look at him. The chameleon, Jamie Varley, who's changed his appearance. This is the same person for anyone who's just coming in. This is Jamie when he was first interviewed with the short black hair that he blow dried before taking his dying adopted son to the hospital, but managed to get his blow drying first. And now this on the right, this is him now. He's got the long blonde streaked hair. Yeah. And he's got the facial hair now. Of course, he'll have lost his job, I would imagine, as a head teacher. Or maybe they're hanging on to see if he gets found guilty or not. We're all innocent till proven guilty. I have to keep reiterating again, these are allegations, charges. The jury has to find him guilty. And then, of course, the partner now, we're talking a lot about Jamie, of course, because currently it's Jamie who's giving his evidence. This is his partner, John. There they are there he is with Blackpool Tower in the background, because that's where this all happened, in Blackpool, in the north of England. Yeah, do you know, I don't like Johnson, so I've seen him being interviewed. Because before I was sort of thinking, oh, maybe it's something that is fault. No, I shouldn't really say that, but that's how I feel. Looks false to me. Everything about their lives looks false. You know, there's little Preston. He's just an accessory. Um, oh look, we've got this little baby. You know, like oh, make our little family complete. But they didn't really care about Jamie. Sorry, about Preston. I don't think this was about giving a child a newly, a good life, a child that, for whatever reason, whose biological parents couldn't have him for whatever reason, whether they voluntarily gave him up or whether he was taken off them. There's talk, of course, that Preston's written, and this was in the Blackpool Gazette. Like some people are saying it's not true, but there was a story in the Blackpool Gazette that that Preston's real mum was a murderer. And she murdered someone when she was 13, 14 years old. Her and her friend murdered this elderly lady who's called Lily. And this is her when she was 13, 14. This is her more recently. She's at, well, I think she's out of prison now. But she got very light sentence. She's had parole. She's been sent back to prison. And, she's in her 30s now. But it wasn't in the Blackpool Gazette. So it was in the mainstream media that that his Preston Davies' real mum is actually convicted murderess. She was very young, but listen, everybody makes mistakes when they're young. But what was done to this elderly lady, it wasn't, how can I explain it? It wasn't like a robbery gone wrong and maybe pushed her over. She was tortured. She was tortured, murdered, put in a bin. This happened in Failsworth in Manchester. She was tortured, murdered, put in a wheelie bin, taken and dumped in a river. While the two girls who did it, so somebody did it, I mean, it's a real murder, whether it's Preston's mum or not, I don't know. But the two girls who did it, who were like 13, 14 years old, then they spent her pension money on sweets and chocolate, used her phone. It was horrible, horrible case. And it was in the they did say in the Blackpool Gazette that she was Preston's mum, but I think that I couldn't then, that was removed, that story. So I think we might find out after the trial about it. So, Sicilian Spitfire. Yeah, it is true, isn't it? It is true. Sarah Davey. There's a vigil coming up. Somebody else was saying in another video. There's a vigil coming up for Preston. So, I don't know how I feel about this, about his mum. I mean, should people be forgiven such terrible crimes when they're so young? Because it really is. It's not shoplifting, it's like torture and murder. Um, an abuse of the body, like, just chucking her in the river like she was a bit of old rubbish. Should young people really get life? You know? That's a whole nother sort of ethical thing. It's like the killers of Jamie Bulger and that they were given a new life, new identities. And one of them has already been back to prison twice because he hasn't changed. It's a lot. It's raising a lot of questions, isn't it? So, anyway, back to Preston. So I wonder if that, whether about Preston's biological mum will come out more after this trial. Okay, going back to the thing. So Mr. Wright asks how Preston got an internal bruise. Mr. Varley says, "There's oh right, get your Pinocchios ready because this is going to be a total load of crap, isn't it? There's only one possibility in my eyes for that. When I was rubbing below his body and rubbing up, I remember applying force to get water out of his belly. Oh my God, where's the Pinocchio? Right, so this is the reason for his internal bruise. Because he was rubbing his belly trying to get the water out, according to Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire. Do you know what? Anyway, I hope the jury doesn't fall for this. So, Mr. Wright says, you said it was like squeezing a tube of toothpaste. If we searched all the material into this case as to what you said prior to this trial, would tube of toothpaste ever come up? No, but rubbing his belly would, Mr. Varley says. And Mr. Wright asks, why now do you describe it in those terms? And Mr. Varley says he felt it was best to describe it to the jury in that way so it was clear. Is it that you are seeking to craft an account in anticipation of the expert report as a possible mechanism for that bruise? Mr. Wright says that it is the result of a forceful assault that afternoon at a time when only you were present. I don't believe that to be the case now. I don't think you get internal bruising because someone's rubbed your belly, do you? Anyway. So Mr. Wright says, at first you didn't say anything about using force. You said account, not in that first account, Mr. Varley says. And Mr. Wright asks, how did he get that bruise to his throat? Not because of me, Mr. Varley says. And Mr. Wright asks if he maintains that the hospital staff were rough with Preston. So that was the other thing, he blamed the hospital staff for the bruise at the back of Preston's throat. I believe so from what I witnessed, Mr. Varley said. Were you just hedging your bets, he says to Mr. Varley. No, that's incorrect, Mr. Varley said. So yeah, cast a few people, sort of he cast shade on the medical staff, even on his mum and his stepdad. I don't know how that happened, but, blah, de, blah, de, blah, de, blah. Well, I think we do know how it happened, Jamie, sadly. I think we do know, don't we? I think we do know exactly how it happened. Very sad. Very, very sad. Well, I'll tell you what, if he is found guilty and he goes to prison, you need to be looking over his shoulder, won't it? Because it reminds me of that Ian Watkins, the guy that was the singer in the Lost Prophets, the ex-boyfriend of Fern Cotton. Imagine finding out that your ex-boyfriend, imagine a few years, I've really felt for Fern Cotton, because a few years down the line, you find out that your ex, somebody who you've actually had sex with, slept with, had relations with, and they're convicted of raping a baby. I don't know how you reconcile to that. I mean, obviously, it's not your fault. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you'd feel like you want to get in the shower for like weeks. You'd want to wash that person off you, even if you hadn't been with them for years. It's just, and that's why I don't understand if John, Jamie's partner, is innocent himself. Why is he still with him? I know he's not been proven guilty yet, but there's quite a lot of evidence, isn't there? I mean, if you saw all that evidence, maybe he hasn't seen all the evidence till now. But you'd be like, God, you won't be able to get clean, would you? To know that you had slept with this person at some point. Yourself, you'd had intimate relations with them. And then it turned out, that they RAPD'd a baby. Anyway. So, yeah, if they're found guilty, of course, they will go to prison. And if they do go to prison, it won't be pleasant. It won't be pleasant, that's for sure. Right, there's no new things coming through yet. Let's have a look in the comments. Yeah, Sarah, they've had a long time to to get their story straight, haven't they? Because this happened in 2023. Then Jamie said that they didn't speak to each other for a couple of weeks or whatever, but then they got back together, so they've been living together ever since then until they were arrested and charged. So they have had plenty of time to come up with a story between them that they think will, wash, like get them off the hook. So the thing is, they're both trying to get off the hook. It's harder for Preston, sorry, not Preston, for Jamie, because Jamie was there with Preston. So it's harder for him to convince the jury that he's innocent. Whereas the position that John seems to be trying to present is he didn't know any of this. He didn't know about any of it. I didn't have a clue what little one was going through at home. He kept calling him little one, didn't he? He didn't have a clue. Yeah. I think that's a good point, Zillion Spitfire. Yeah, because if John turns on Jamie, will Jamie then reveal what John really knew? So John's trying to keep Jamie sweet without going too far. Yeah, I think that's a good. But they're like this. They're locked together in hell, aren't they? They're intrinsically locked together in this sort of hellish partnership. Um, let's have Jamie has been charged with more things, hasn't he? So charges. Let's actually see, they'll be on the police website. Yeah, they're like this unholy alliance, aren't they? You know? So, right, let's have a look. When was this? So on the 13th of June 2025, the Crown Prosecution Service authorised charges against 2 men following the death of a 13-month-old boy in Blackpool. Let me share this with you. Let's take the picture off. Yeah, so these are the charges. So the Crown Prosecution Service has authorised the prosecution of two men in relation to the death of a 13-month-old boy in Blackpool. So the other thing you have to remember is these cases are so difficult to prove. When the Crown Prosecution Service does authorise that they can be charged, I always think they're probably more likely to be guilty than not, because how often does it happen that the charges aren't made and everyone complains about the Crown Prosecution Service and says, why didn't they charge them? But they probably didn't have enough evidence. So the fact that the Crown Prosecution Service allowed these charges to go ahead suggests to me it's more likely that they're guilty than not guilty. But that's the way I always think about it. It's hard to bring cases to trial. It's not dead easy if there's not like obvious smoking gun sort of type evidence. So Jamie Varley of Grimsarg in Lancashire has been charged with the murder of baby Preston Davey, in addition to a series of serious sex and child cruelty offences. And John McGowan for Zachary, 31. So Jamie's 36. Do you know what? He should know better. He's, racing towards 40. And John McGowan, he's 31. I mean, they're not, like teenagers. I mean, should be a bit more switched on, shouldn't they? And he's been charged with allowing the death of a child, in addition to sex cruelty and sex offences. So John has been charged with cruelty and sex offences too. The Crown Prosecution Service has worked closely with Lancashire Police following a detailed police investigation to review the available evidence and advise on the appropriate charges. We recognise the profoundly distressing nature of the alleged crimes. However, we remind all concerned that criminal proceedings against these defendants are now active and they have a right to a free trial. It's extremely important there should be no reporting, commentary, or sharing of information online which could in any way prejudice the proceedings. That's funny because I don't know about you, but until this trial actually started, I did not know about this case. So it had been kept quite hush-hush, hadn't it? Anyway, so yeah, look, So Jamie Varley, date of birth 11th of March 89, and John McGowan for Zachary, date of birth 2nd of July 93, are both formerly of Blackpool and now at Chandler's Way, Grimsarg. So that's where they've been living lately. So look at these offences that Varley is charged with. 1 count of murder, 1 count of manslaughter, 2 counts of assault by penetration of a child under 13, contrary to section blah of the SEX Offences Act. 5 counts of cruelty to a person under 16. 1 count of inflicting grievous bodily harm. 1 count of SEX assault of a child under 13. 10 counts of taking indecent photographs of a child. 1 count of distributing indecent photographs of a child. 2 counts of possession of an indecent pseudo image of a child. So that's probably not to do with Preston. So when they say a pseudo image, they mean like an AI image. 1 count of possession of an extreme P image. So they're his offences that he's been charged with. I've said right from the beginning, there'll be more things. This guy, he's not got to 37 or whatever, and just suddenly decided to start doing horrible things like this. There'll be other things on his phone, other things in his past. Anyway, McGowan for Zachary charged with less charges. 1 count of allowing the death of a child, 2 counts of cruelty to a person under 16 and 1 count of sex assault of a child under 13. That's a lot of offences, isn't it? Especially for Jamie. Let's go back to the. So there's been a couple more posts. Oh, I think I may have gone off there for a minute. Am I back? I may have gone off there for a little minute. But anyway, I'm back. So let's go back to. You can see me and hear me okay. Let's go to the next post. So Mr. Wright says, you said you were rubbing and tapping his back. No reference to clearing his throat. Trying to get it all out. If he has swallowed water, it needs to come out. No reference to squeezing his belly. No. Not here, no, Mr. Varley says. You said you panicked, hit his back and rubbed his belly. Mr. Wright says. He quotes Mr. Varley's previous account in which he said, I was pushing on his chest to try and get it out. It was only really when John got home that I pushed down on his chest. I think I said to John I didn't know if he was breathing. John said we should call an ambulance. He was responsive and his eyes were open. But Mr. Wright says he wasn't responsive, was he? And Mr. Varley said, I believed he was. That boy was dead before they even took him out the house. Mr. Wright says Preston was unresponsive at this stage, and that's why the blood gas results were as they were. That is incorrect, Mr. Varley says. Well, you can't argue with the medical evidence, really. Mr. Wright says Mr. Varley had seen that his eyes were open, but he didn't seem with it. You said you tilted his head back and breathed into his mouth, Mr. Wright says. You said you could hear his heartbeat. That's a lie as well, isn't it? I think that's definitely a lie. But Mr. Varley says incorrect. So don't forget, at the hospital, they did manage to get a faint heartbeat back twice, but they could not resuscitate him properly. So Mr. Wright asked Mr. Varley about who he meant when he said, I'm so angry at him while they were in the hospital. Oh my God, this gives me the absolute shivers when he says this. Mr. Varley says he was angry at little one. I was angry he had left me. Fuck off. Oh my God. Sorry. Just so, oh my God. I was angry with little one. I was angry he had left me. Thank God that baby did leave you. Oh my God. What a thing to say. To be angry with that baby because you've abused them to the point of death and you're angry with little one. He's a horrible man, this. He is a horrible man. I tell you what, if your mum's watching, are you proud of your son? Are you? You know, what sort of a man is this? Why express it in those terms, Mr. Wright asks. Because he'd left me, Mr. Varley says. Oh, God. And Mr. Wright says, this was all a pretense, Mr. Varley. And Mr. Varley says, you're wrong. So yeah, he's trying to say he's only just left him then, but what Mr. Wright is saying, the boy was already dead. I think he was. What do you all think? Do you think that little, oh God, don't let me say little one. Little Preston, do you think he was already dead before he even got into the hospital? I think they waited till the last possible moment to take him. I think they were waiting for Preston to bounce back, as he had done before on God knows how many occasions. And he didn't bounce back, did he? He'd had enough. Do you know what? This little boy, little Preston, he just gave up. His little body gave up. Reminds me a bit of Sarah Sharif. That's what. Do you remember the Sarah Sharif case? That was her own father and stepmother, that biological father, that abused her, and that. And she, I think her little, in the end, they just give up. She was older. I think she was 7 or 8, and children are resilient. It's amazing what they put up with abuse-wise. They keep bouncing back, as Jamie referred to it. But I do think sometimes they just get to a point where they just cut, they just give up. Because if Preston would have survived, how long would it have been before the same thing happened to him again? Let's suppose he survived that day, that incident, by some miracle. How long would it be before it was happening to him again? How long would he have had to put up with this abuse? It just doesn't bear thinking about. Where so you were a single. Yeah, it's hard being a single parent, but you know what, I was a single parent too, and of course single parents used to get blamed for everything, but that's immigrants get blamed for everything, not single parents or same-sex couples or whatever. There's always a bloody there's always a scapegoat, isn't there? And you know what I think? I don't believe that these men are bad because they're gay. I think they're bad because they're bad. They're horrible people. Just because someone's gay doesn't make them a nice person or a horrible person. They're just a person. And there's good and bad with everyone, and these are bad. These are bad people. And that's what I'm saying. What will his mum make? I'm just thinking, if this was my son, oh my God, I hope that never happens. Imagine finding out, that your son had been so heartless, so sadistic, even if you took away the sex part of it, just the way he treated this little boy. Imagine you're finding out your son, this is her grandchild. Just hours before this little baby died, she was dangling him on her knee and singing "Clap Hand, His Daddy Comes." The jury was shown that video. Singing to him, "Clap Hand, His Daddy Comes," with some cakeys and some buns, all for Elijah or Preston Elijah, or little one, or whatever she called him. Imagine that, and then just literally a few hours later, that little boy is dead at the hands of her own son. I don't know how that must feel to her. I don't know how, and I feel for her, to be honest. So, this is interesting, and this comes back to what you were saying, Sarah. We're on the next bit now. The defendant denies that he became resentful of Preston during his final weeks. I think he was resentful of Preston. I think Preston was definitely, as you say, cramping their style. And Mr. Wright questions Mr. Varley about alleged disclosures to his colleague, Janet G., that he had dark thoughts about harming Preston. And you say Miss G misunderstood you. We know from the timing that this disclosure came at a time when Preston had his arm in a cast. Yeah, when he'd fractured his arm. That was her evidence. After July the 6th, during what would be the final 3 weeks of his life, you were becoming increasingly desperate about the care responsibilities being placed on you. Incorrect, Mr. Varley says. I suggest you became resentful of him, Mr. Wright says. No, Mr. Varley says. You had taken it out on Preston on many occasions, as reflected in the videos and the photos in this case, Mr. Wright says. That's not true, Mr. Varley replies. Mr. Wright says that Mr. Varley started to abuse him in the way reflected in the events of July. Fractured elbow on the 5th of July and sex abuse of him. That's not true, Mr. Varley says. What do you all think? Do you think? I think that probably is true. I think that is very likely. He became resentful. Very likely that Jamie became resentful of this little boy, cramping his style, ruining his relationship, just affecting his whole life, wasn't it? Because he wasn't working anymore. John was going out to work. He was probably jealous. Yeah. And every time John was working away, he was on the message to him saying something had happened. He's such an attention seeker. He really is. It's a bit pathetic, isn't it, really? A grown man, nearly 40 years old, and, crying out for attention or being jealous of a little baby. That he wanted, let's get this straight here. This is not a baby that was inflicted on him. It wasn't he wasn't an accident and he ended up being a father and he didn't want to be one. He wanted this baby. They wanted this baby. They went through the adoption process. But what they wanted was the idea of having a baby. The fantasy of it. And babies are beautiful, but they are hard work. They are hard work. They do cramp your style. They do, definitely do. Because especially when they're this little, they literally consume 24 hours. You can't leave them, not even, you can't even put them in front of the telly and, maybe while you wash up or have a shower or whatever. You can't. The only time you've got any freedom when you've got a baby is when they're asleep. And the thing is, it sounds that Preston, his sleep patterns were not good. So they probably couldn't rely on him, like putting him to bed at 9 o'clock or whatever, and then he would sleep through till the next morning. I was lucky like that with my son. He did sleep well. Once he got his feeding patterns sorted out properly, he would sleep all night, so, and I know sleep deprivation, it does affect your mental health, doesn't it? But the thing is, they chose this baby, this wasn't, I say, an accident. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't, something that they had to do. They chose this. And then they didn't follow through, and that just shows their emotional immaturity. They're old enough to know better, but they must be very emotionally immature. They just couldn't. Anyway, then Mr. Wright says, is that the next one? Yeah. Mr. Wright says that Mr. Varley contacted Janet G in early August after his release. Ooh. So after he was released, he contacted Janet G. You were telling her that Preston had fallen out of the bath seat and was face down in the water. Mr. Wright says, and Mr. Varley replies, I remember saying I think he was face down. And you said, Jan, I promise you I did not do anything. Did you say that to her? And Mr. Varley says, Jan spoke about the murder allegation. I can't recall the full conversation, but it's likely. And Mr. Wright says, she says it's the first thing you said to her. Jan, I promise you I did not do anything. I suggest that you said that on the first occasion that you saw her having been released and when Preston was dead was because of what you had said to her in July when you went round to her house with Preston, who had his arm in a cast. And you told her you had dark thoughts about drowning or suffocating Preston. And Mr. Varley says, I did not. Mr. Wright says, that is why Preston, then being believed by you to have drowned in the bath, you were contacting her to allay any fears she might have that you had been as good as your word. Oh, so what he's saying is that because he told this woman that he had dark thoughts about drowning him, he then contacted her and said, "Oh, I definitely didn't drown him." God, what a weird situation, isn't it? So he's telling people. I don't know, what would you do if your friend said to you that they were having dark thoughts about drowning their baby? I don't know what you would do, to be honest. Anyway, Mr. Wright says you did that for a reason. You realised you needed to speak to her to reassure her. Otherwise, there was a risk she would reveal to the police what you had said. That is incorrect, Mr. Varley says. Right, so he's denying that. Right, while we're waiting, it must be finishing soon, but I need to just go to the little girl's room. I need a toilet break. I won't be right. I'm just going to turn off the camera and the not turn off the camera. Good boy. I think I left the microphone on there. I had to give the dog some food because I've got to change him over shortly. Gosh, they're certainly making up. They're certainly making up for the bank holiday because this has been a really, really long session. You know, I think it's still going on, yeah, and it's 4:30 in the UK, so they're making up for missing a couple of days over the bank holiday, aren't they? Anyway, so dogs are happy they've got some food. Uh, so let's see. So there's been one more post. Mr. Wright asks, why did you seek to get in contact with her? You were not supposed to be contacting any colleagues. And Mr. Varley replies, that's incorrect. I believe they were told not to speak to the media. And Mr. Wright asks about an occasion when he rang his place of work and gave a false name. So Jamie rang his place of work and gave a false name. I gave a name they should know me by, Mr. Varley says. I believe it to be Maudsley. I was known by that. Staff I was contacting should have recognised that name. Staff did not want a lot of questions from other members of staff questioning them. What? Mr. Wright asks, or did you want to try to speak to Janet G without giving your details away? So, is it what is accusing? What Mr. Wright is accusing him of is ringing up under a false name to try and get to this woman, and he's denying it. He said, "Oh, they would know that was my name." He's lying again, isn't he? He's lying again. Where's my Pinocchios? Total liar. You know, you can't believe a word that comes out this man's mouth, can you? You know, God, how did this baby, how was this lovely little baby allowed to go to this man? I tell you what, they didn't do their homework enough to let this couple have this beautiful little boy. I think sometimes, with the social services and that, because there are a lot of children, sadly, who come up into the care network and that, and are they that desperate for people to have them that it's just, oh, thank God somebody wants this child, let's find somewhere for them. I don't know what's going on. How were they ever allowed to have him? Anyway, Mr. Wright says, or did you just try to speak to Janet without giving your details away? And he says, that is incorrect. I spoke to her multiple times while I was on bail, and Jan asked me to stay in touch. Well, I'll tell you what, she's a better woman than me, because I don't think I would have wanted to be in touch with him. Mr. Wright says you were trying to close down any prospect of her revealing what you said about having dark thoughts. That is not the case, no, Mr. Varley says. I was losing pay from work. Didn't. It's all about money to this couple as well. The kayak, what they were going to get for the kayak, the messages they were exchanging as that baby was dying on the bed next to him. Money is more important, isn't it, than anything to them. So more important what they're going to get for this kayak than, oh, by the way, Preston is breathing his last on the bed here, but never mind. Did you find out about the kayak? This is the sort of people they are. He was losing pay from work. Oh my goodness. They asked me to update them regularly. I did not have Jan G's number on my new number. Needs his new phone, probably. It's all nonsense, Mr. Wright says. It's not, Mr. Varley responds. I think it probably is. Anyway, we'll find out. See what the jury thinks. So obviously this woman, Janet G, she went to the police because they know about it. So she's gone and said that he tried to get in touch with her. You were trying to manipulate your friend, Mr. Wright says. Why did you give an explanation? Ooh, why did you give an explanation as to why sperm was on the towel you used to dry Preston? Oh, God. Oh, my God. Mr. Varley says there was no mention of that whatsoever. The word was amylase. Amylase? What's amylase? What the frig is amylase? Does anybody know? So Mr. Wright says, she said she didn't know what that word meant. I suggest she did hear what you said in respect of an explanation as to why sperm could be found on the towel. There was no sperm mentioned, Mr. Varley says. Oh, God, what a surreal conversation. Mr. Wright says, you were trying to hedge your bets about what you believe might be found, linking you to an sex assault the day of your son's death. No, Mr. Varley says. Mr. Wright says you were trying to manipulate your friend to minimise links with Preston's death or abuse. No, Mr. Varley says again. What is amylase? I've never heard of it. What's he talking about? Oh, the dog's coming to say hello to me now. I'm like, oh, you've been on there for ages. Come and give us some attention. Amylase. What is that? So, amylase is a crucial digestive enzyme that breaks down complex carbohydrates into simpler sugars like glucose, and it's primarily produced by your salivary glands and pancreas. So, is he saying that it wasn't sperm, it was saliva on the towel, not sperm? I don't know. I have no idea. Just I just haven't got words with this case. Right, this is now talking about him taking a picture of Preston's bottom. So Mr. Wright asks why Mr. Varley asked someone to box up the sex toys in his house and remove them. So that was another thing. He asked his friend to go in, get the sex toys, which, probably most people have got some sex toys in their house. We were in I mean, it's not against the law, is it? But apparently, when why would you do that? I mean, it is embarrassing, probably, if you think the police are going to go in and search your house and, find all your sex toys. It would be a bit embarrassing. But he got his friend to go in there and take them away. Anyway, Mr. Varley disagrees with the allegation. And then Mr. Wright says, why tell Janet G that you took an image of Preston's bottom to show the doctor? And Mr. Varley replies, potentially we would have had to show the doctor if he improved. Are you saying you took the image to show it to the doctor? Mr. Wright asks. Yes, that will have been the case, Mr. Varley said. But didn't he say he hadn't noticed anything on Preston's bottom? Anyway, now apparently he told Janet G he took the picture to show it to the doctor. I don't know. Anyway, Mr. Wright says it doesn't appear he showed it to anyone other than his partner. But Mr. Varley says he showed it to his mum. Now, I don't know how long this trial is expected to go on, but do you think Jamie's mum will end up testifying? Because that's important, because if he only showed that photo to his partner, that's like an sex thing almost, isn't it? But if he was genuinely concerned about it and he took it to show a doctor, well, one, there'd be a doctor who'd seen it, wouldn't there? But, I don't know if they're going to bring a doctor in who confirms that he showed it to him. But will Jamie Varley's mum appear and testify? He says he showed it to his mum. Did he? It's like, who do you believe? Anyway, then he was asked about contradictory accounts of how Preston injured his arm. And Mr. Wright asks why Varley gave contradictory accounts of how Preston fractured his arm. I'm just going to put a picture of him up again. Twonk number 1. Who he is. Just want people to know who he is. So, is it that you have given many competing explanations in order to conceal what really happened, he asked. And Mr. Varley says the accounts are very similar, just approached in a different way. Oh, he's full of it. He's full of crap, this guy. Mr. Wright says you caused that fracture by violently pulling and twisting his arm. I did not, Mr. Varley says. Yeah, so just to remind you, we did have a doctor giving evidence at some point who said it was very unusual for a baby to have a fractured arm. It would be virtually impossible for it to happen by accidental means because of babies' bones being the way they are. That it was much more likely that injury, that particular injury of the fractured arm, had been caused by deliberately, not caused accidentally. It would be virtually impossible for a baby to injure its arm in that way. That's what the medical people said. So, what the doctor said. So that's the reason why they're there with their expert testimony, I suppose. Yeah. So it's, gosh, when I might have to finish now. Actually, I've actually got some Spanish classes shortly, so I may have to finish. I think I'll just wait a little bit longer. I think they've got to wrap up soon because it's 20 to 5 now in the UK. They normally finish around 4, but I think they're trying to make up for what they missed because there was no hearing Monday or Tuesday, so they missed 2 days, and I think they've tried to make up for it on this day. This has been a very full day of evidence, hasn't it? Are they even going to? Is he even going to finish off his testimony today? I mean, I'll carry on until my class, which is at 6 o'clock Spanish time, 5 o'clock UK time, in 20 minutes. But I am going to go and get another drink because, gosh, how long have I been on for? Oh my God, it's been 3 hours and 9 minutes. 3 hours and 9 minutes, my goodness. Still, it's important, isn't it? I wanted to go through the testimony. Let me change. I'm going to put John's photo up for a while with the Blackpool Tower in the background. His partner. I'm just going to go and get a drink, and then hopefully this today's hearing, if you like, will finish. But I've got to go at 6 anyway. Look, because I've got class to do, haven't I? I've got to change you over for this time. See. Don't know if you got a glimpse of Rocky there. As soon as I get up out my chair, that dog is literally right there. So you may have seen him, but oh, don't worry, Sarah. Don't worry. I'll see you next time, and you can always recap. I'm hoping it'll be finished shortly. Surely it can't go on much longer. I'm hoping that the next post might be to say that they're finished for the day or whatever. But thank you for being here with us, Sarah, and have a good evening. Let's put some pictures of Preston up while we're waiting. Yeah. Oh, actually, so don't forget the person who did the post-mortem on little Preston is this lady, Alison Armour. And she's the lady who did the post-mortem on Nicola Bulley, for any of you who know about the Nicola Bulley case. This is the pathologist that did the autopsy on Nicola Bulley, and this is the pathologist that did the autopsy on Preston. And she has experience with, she did the autopsy on a little girl called Poppy. It was a very contentious autopsy, so she has been involved in contentious cases. Anyway, she is one of the medical professionals who said that poor little Preston died through obstruction to the airway. She's not the only one. There was another doctor, but she's the one who actually examined Preston, whereas the other doctors who have confirmed that they think Preston's cause of death is obstruction to the airway. The other medical professionals, they made that assessment from records and photos and from Alison's report, etc. So Alison was the one that made the actual physical examination of Preston. And that must be a horrible thing to have to do, isn't it? I mean, personally, I think autopsies would be a horrible thing to do. That's just the way I am. But somebody has to do them. I'm glad somebody does it. But it must be really quite difficult, and emotional. I know, in the end, you just have to build up a thick skin, I suppose. But that must be difficult, isn't it? Post-mortem on a child. It's got to be distressing. You've got to take that home with you, really, up to a point, haven't you? It's got to stay with you. A little baby there on an autopsy table, being killed in this way must be awful. So, my heart goes out to her as well. All the medical staff. I wonder what they're thinking now, because all that medical staff, that were there on the day when Preston was finally rushed to hospital after he was by this twonk or these twonks, when he was already dead before they took him there. But anyway, they tried their best to save Preston. They worked on him for over an hour. They did manage to find a faint pulse apparently twice, but they couldn't get him back completely, sadly. So that would have been something they all went home with that day as well. All of the staff that worked on him and comforted Jamie Varley, because they were all comforting him as he was screaming for his mum in the corridor, wasn't he? And, just worrying about himself. All those medical staff, they would have had to go home and think about that. I don't think you can switch off from that. A baby. I mean, I know that if you work in the A&E, you're going to see some horrible things, aren't you? But just got to be that extra traumatic when it's a baby that's turning up there and you can't save it. As much as you try, just, they've got to live with that, haven't they? They have got to live with that. And it just must be difficult for them, I think. Anyway, however experienced you are, however long you've been in the job, somebody brings a baby in like that and you've got to try and save them and you can't. It's got to be difficult, hasn't it? It's got to be something that stays with you for quite a while. Okay, we've got another post. Mr. Wright asks if Mr. Varley was able to give a full, more detailed account of events by September the 14th. No, the arrest was equally traumatic, Mr. Varley says. Mr. Wright says Mr. Varley's phone had been examined by police at that point. What had been discovered were a series of events of a physical and sex nature, a psychological nature, demonstrating you had repeatedly ill-treated that child. Mr. Varley replies, no. And then the jury is shown a pixelated image of Preston naked on a playmat, touching his genitals. Mr. Varley says he did not keep track of how many pictures and videos he had. Well, I'll tell you how many pictures and videos I've got of my son touching his genitals when he's a baby, and that would be none. I don't have to keep track of that. I'm not saying I've not got any nude pictures of him when he was in the bath. I don't remember exactly. There probably are some pictures of him in the bath, in a bubble bath, but there are none of him lying on a playmat and touching his genitals. How many of you who've got children, you may have some nude pictures of your children? Is it, I don't know, because it's not always sinister, is it? But I think it is sinister if you're taking a picture of them actually playing with their genitals. I mean, I hope I'm explaining this okay. Anyway, he did not keep track of how many pictures and videos he had, and Mr. Wright asks why he recorded Preston touching his genitals, and he said, I thought it was funny, that is all. And why record it more than once, Mr. Wright asks. And Mr. Varley says, because it's funny. There were times he would talk to himself, his cheeky smile. These were never shared outside of our household. These were people I trust explicitly. I may have shared one or two with my partner. I can't recall which. I'm not too sure. Do you remember he said that he took them and he was going to show them to Preston when he was older to make him laugh, or to his boyfriend or his girlfriend? Whatever. So Mr. Wright asks, did you or did you not share images of him playing with his genitals? And he said, I can't recall what I shared with John. Oh, come on, you don't do that, do you? How many couples? Do you imagine taking a video or a picture of your baby playing with its genitals and then showing it, sending it off to your husband who's at work? Oh, have you seen this? What they were doing today? Just not going to do it, are you? There is nothing to keep a secret, Mr. Varley said. And Mr. Wright says there was no secret between you in terms of the shared interest in these events. There is no shared interest, Mr. Varley says. Mr. Wright says there is a very clear shared interest. That is why you are recording it for your own sex gratification. You're 100% wrong, Mr. Varley says. And Mr. Wright says you are sharing it with your partner, who I will suggest by July had a shared sex interest. And Mr. Varley said, John and I do not have an sex interest in children. Well, what do you think? Do they? Now, I'm definitely after, it's 5 to 6 here in Spain. I've got class at 6. So surely they're not going to go on past 5 o'clock there in the UK, are they? That's very unusual for them, isn't it, to do that? Normally they finish around 4 o'clock. So yeah, I think they're just trying to make up for the lost time from the bank holiday. But I wouldn't, this is Jamie, of course, giving his defence. I suppose John is going to at some point. So there's quite a long way to go in this trial, isn't there? And are they going to bring more witnesses? Is the mother going to be, is Jamie's mum going to be asked to testify? Are we actually going to see his friend testify, though, at Janet G? Or have we already seen her testify? I don't know with what, he said to her. It's a big case, isn't it? A long case. There's still quite a lot more evidence to come, or testimony to come. Once the defendants start speaking in their defence, it always gets quite long. I should do a poll, actually. In fact, I think I will. Let's see. Oh God, where can I do? How do I do it? Let's see if I can do a poll. Got too many windows open. I need to find where I can do a poll. Not that I'll have much time to do it now because I've got to go in 2 minutes. Yeah, next time I'll do a poll. Too late now, I think. I think I would have thought about that 3 hours ago, really, wouldn't you? And then I could have got all your opinions on whether you think they're guilty or not. What's generally people's opinion? We're going along the line that it's like it's going to be a guilty verdict. Do you think who will they both be found guilty or both be found innocent? Or don't forget, it's manslaughter, murder, all those different charges, of course. So yeah, right. Oh, so another post. This is going to be the last post that I can do. The foster parent did not tell us to do free willy time. Oh, so remember this about the free willy time. In fact, I'm not going to do this. I'll do this tomorrow. I've got to go. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about Preston. So tomorrow we'll start with the free willy time that they said originally at some point that the foster parent had encouraged them to do with Preston, but now apparently to this latest post, they didn't. So anyway, I've got to go. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for caring about this little boy. Please don't forget to subscribe, to subscribe, share the video, and press the notifications bell because I will be carrying on with this. Every day there is any movement in this case, I'll be covering it. So thank you so much. See you really soon in the next video. And until then, may your God be. Bye. Thank you.